The main hall of the royal palace. The head of state gives the black-haired girl who came to him the right to choose a groom. This right is a thank you to the girl for winning the war. The black-haired woman opens her eyes wide. She expected a completely different reward. The girl had not yet thought about marriage and her future chosen one. She thought she would meet her love when the time was right. The king tells the black-haired woman that whoever she chooses will be obliged to marry her. People in the hall begin to whisper excitedly among themselves. None of the mothers of the young aristocrats wants the girl to choose her son. The fact is that there are not very good rumors about the black-haired man. Some believe that this warrior girl comes from a savage tribe and can smell blood from several kilometers away. To understand the whole situation, it is worth delving into history. 30 years ago, the skilled warrior Amir Pervaz saved the heir to the empire. He, instead of rewarding Amir, ordered him to exterminate the northern Lur tribe. The loyal warrior agreed to fulfill the king's wish, although he understood that he was going to die. The Lur tribe was ready for war. Unlike the kingdom's troops, Amir died. After that, his sons began to lead the army, but they also died on the battlefield. Then Amir's daughter Asha had to take control of the army. This black-haired girl, like her father, knew military affairs. She was an excellent horseman and flawless swordsmanship. Days passed. Ashu held on with her last strength. Waging an unequal battle is not an easy task. The Lur tribe fought desperately, not sparing the emperor's soldiers. The number of corpses in the cold northern lands increased every hour. Asha began to develop a plan of retreat. But one day a miracle happened. The emperor's army won. But the joy from this event did not linger in the heart of the dark-haired woman for long. Due to the harsh winter, the supply of food products to the Pervaz tribe was stopped. People were dying of hunger. Of course, the king knew about it, but he was in no hurry to help the inhabitants of these lands. As always, Asha had to save her people on her own. One day, the black-haired woman received a letter from the head of state. The king summoned Asha to his palace to thank the girl for her heroism. The black-haired woman believed the man. The girl hoped that the king would give the Pervaz tribe money to buy food. However, the treacherous and greedy lord had a completely different plan. The man asked Asha how old she was. 22, your grace, answered the black-haired woman. The king noted that young ladies usually get married at this age. Haven't they proposed to you yet? The second question. Asha said in a low tone that she really hadn't been proposed to yet. The king smiled sinisterly. I grant you the right to choose your bridegroom. I consider it a reward for victory. That's how it all happened. Now Asha is confused. She does not know how to react to the king's words. And the man takes advantage of the condition of the girl. He asks the servant to give Asha the lists of aristocrats. A girl can choose any of the proposed men. The names of aristocrats at the beginning of the list indicate the high rank of their families. But won't the reputation of the Pervaz tribe suffer if I choose someone who doesn't want to marry me? Asha asks. The king says that in this case, the family of the chosen one must pay monetary compensation. Black-haired looks around the hall. A girl wants to choose someone who hates her to get money. The only question is how much the parents of the unfortunate will be willing to pay. Ash should choose an aristocrat from a very rich family. And there is one in the hall. Black-haired says loudly that she wants to marry the Duke of Carlisle Haven. This is a member of the royal family, a prince who has been temporarily deprived of power and authority. Carlisle is quite a handsome guy. Dark red, almost crimson hair, orange eyes. The appearance of this aristocrat is mesmerizing. Carlisle was stripped of his crown prince status only 4 days ago. All because of the boy's quarrel with his father, the king. Asha innocently tells the head of state that Carlisle is on the list of aristocrats proposed to her. Besides, he is in the first place there. The king grits his teeth in rage. He assumed that Ashi would choose some rich man, but that this rich man would be his son. The man barely restrains himself so as not to drive the girl away. Asha reminds the queen that if she refuses, his family will have to pay the head of the Pervaz tribe monetary compensation. The man drills the black-haired man with an angry look. People in the hall begin to whisper, but this time not about the origin of Asha, but about the stupidity of the king himself. If he does not want to give his son to the black-haired woman, he has the right to demand money. That is, the queen will still have to pay the girl for the victory in the bloody war. The only question is what the reward will be, money or a member of the royal family. Suddenly, Karail stands up and approaches the black-haired woman. Marquis Pervaz. The boy smiles mockingly. I accept your offer wholeheartedly. Asha freezes in place. Her plan failed. All a girl needs now is money, not a man, even a very handsome one. The black-haired woman thinks what to do now. Her confusion amuses the boy. He twinkles his eyes. Good luck to you, dear. Carlyle perceives marriage with Asha Pervaz as a kind of game. Royal living room. Carlyle is sitting in an easy chair drinking tea. Asha enters the room. She greets the boy and asks why he called her. At the same time, the black-haired man calls his fiancé the Crown Prince. Carlyle smiles slyly and reminds his wife that he has been stripped of that title. As we know, this happened very recently when Asha arrived in the capital with her army. Rumors spread through town that Carlyle had seduced his father's mistress. The black-haired man was not at all surprised by this. The king is a greedy, selfish, and capricious person. Why would his children be different? The guy crosses his arms over his chest. You've been silent for too long. Carlyle guesses that Asha has her eye on him. The young man hopes that he is wrong, because it will be very difficult to interact with a girl who is head over heels in love. Not at all, Asha finally spoke. The girl folds her hands in her lap and says that she is jealous of her future husband's body. This is partly true. Although Carlyle is tall, making him an obvious target on the battlefield, he has trained muscles. Asha would like to be as strong as Carlyle, but it is almost impossible. The discussion of muscle and strength somehow causes Carlyle to blush faintly. Shall we talk about our deal? The boy changes the subject. Asha does not mind. The only thing she doesn't understand is what kind of deal Carlyle is talking about. The guy lets out a scornful laugh. Did you really think that I agreed to this marriage because I fell in love with you? Black-haired asks the young man what he wants from her. Carlyle says that his father deprived him of the status of heir to the throne for 3 years. During this time, the boy would like to serve Pervaz. Asha is surprised. She could not even imagine that one of the members of the royal family would pay attention to the land of the late Amir. But the black-haired man is in no hurry to be happy either. Carlyle will definitely not work for the benefit of other people just like that. Besides, what will happen when the prince's sentence expires? Will the boy leave the residence of Pervaz? In whose hands will this land end up? Carlyle replies that he is going to divorce Asha when his father restores his status. The redhead also warns Asha that he will not treat her as a wife. If the girl accepts this and does not try to make Carlyle fall in love with her, he will not spare money for the financial support of the Pervaz lands. The girl opens her eyes wide. Carlyle's words make her suspicious. Asha thinks that Carlyle wants to gain experience ruling her lands and then just leave them. Black-haired offers the boy to conclude a contract. The contract, according to which Carlyle will be obliged to provide financial support for the lands of Pervaz for 3 years. The girl does not hide her distrust of the redhead, but he is not offended. The boy, on the contrary, likes the emphatically cold attitude of his future wife towards him. Carlyle smiles out of the corner of his mouth. We'll get along great. A few days later, Redhead's room. Lionel Bailey, Carlyle's friend, carefully reads the contract Asha sent the Duke. Gentlemen, the document is completed correctly. And this is surprising, considering the origin of the black-haired woman and her dubious biography. Lionel, like the king, is not very happy with Carlyle's marriage to Marquise Pervaz. The redhead shrugs. It's only for 3 years. Besides, marrying this savage will help me get rid of old things that don't belong in my house. The boy talks about some of his family members. From the age of 15, Carlyle lived on the battlefield. The king did not spare his son's health and without hesitation sent the young prince on the most dangerous tasks. The man did this because of his new wife, who simply hated Carlyle. She prayed to God that her stepson would die in battle. The new queen wanted her son to become the heir to the throne. But despite the hatred of his father and stepmother and numerous battles, Carlyle lived to the end of the Great War and returned home. The people greeted the crown prince very warmly. Queen Beatrice, the king's second wife, did not like this. She promised herself at any cost to tarnish the young man's reputation and to deprive him of the title of crown prince, and the queen managed to do it. A few days after the young prince returned from the war, Viviana Lowry, the king's mistress, told her husband that Carlyle had broken into her room. The boy said that he was just confusing the door, but the king did not listen to him. He informed his son that he was depriving him of the title of crown prince for 3 years. That's how it all happened. Carlyle knows that the empress set up this scene with Vivian. Beatrice's plan was to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, get rid of both her stepson and her husband's mistress. The redhead is sure that the queen will try with all her might to prevent the restoration of his title. She will seek to secure the throne for Matthias. But Carlisle is not going to give up what is rightfully his so easily. The guy stands up sharply and hits the table with his hand. The throne will be mine. I will kill anyone who encroaches on him. But in order to fight against enemies, Carlisle needs to increase his power and influence. The guy wants to do it in Pervaza, where you will move after marrying Asya. So you're going to marry a woman you only saw for the first time 2 days ago? Lionel asks timidly. You don't know her at all. The redhead says that's not quite the case. He had to communicate with Asya. One day the boy was walking through the capital of the empire. He wandered into a rather dangerous area, where the local drunkards were attached to him. One of them told the waiter that he had to show his pass to walk here. 2 other men, meanwhile, began to tie up Carlisle, threatening him with death. The red-haired man was dressed in a simple road cape with a hood, so the drunkards did not recognize him as a prince. Carlisle was careful because one of the men had a knife. Suddenly, someone's disgruntled voice was heard from somewhere. 3 against 1? Not fair, we will also take part. The drunkards turned their heads to the side and saw a black-haired girl and a young man. A fight started. A stranger stunned one of the drunkards. The other 2 were held by her partner. He asked the girl if he needed to kill the captives. No need, said the black-haired woman. Let's just leave them here. The girl pushed one of the men to the ground. 2 other drunkards took their comrade and left. Black-haired, her partner, and Carlisle were left alone. The prince smiled and thanked the girl. He also promised to pay her for his rescue. The black-haired young man asked the red-haired man to recommend cheap hotels in the capital. Everything is very expensive here, added Asya, and we have almost no money. The red-haired man turned his back to the boy and girl and ordered them to follow him. He led Asya, her partner, and 3 other young men to the palace, where they were able to rest properly. Back to Carlisle and his friend. Lionel is amazed by the redhead's story. So that day you came back so late because of Marquise Pervaz and her pack of savages? The guy sits down in a chair and crosses his arms over his chest. He says that he could not do otherwise. Firstly, he had to thank Asya, and secondly, she was going to receive the king. If the members of the royal family and other aristocrats had seen the black-haired woman in the clothes in which Carlisle met her, they would not have called her a savage princess, but a beggar. Meanwhile, at the hotel, Asya has already told her friends about the contract with the king's son. The guys, to put it mildly, are not happy with the decision of the black-haired woman. They think Carlisle just wants to use the girl. Even if it is, Asya replies in a calm tone, I don't care. The girl is ready to sell herself to anyone, if in this way she can save the inhabitants of Pervaz. For the money that Carlisle is obliged to pay according to the contract, it is possible to heal thousands of wounded during the war with the Lur tribe, and sow all the fields of the land with wheat. The girl's friends sigh. They understand that there is no point in arguing with Asya. She looks a lot like her father. She is just as stubborn and devoted to her motherland. The black-haired man who helped the girl fight the bandits asks when the wedding ceremony will take place. The young man's tone is sad. The guy is very afraid for the marquise. Members of the royal family can do whatever they want with a girl. Blackhaired says that fortunately there won't be a large-scale lavish wedding. Carlisle and the girl will take wedding vows and immediately go to Pervaz after that. The girl's friends are surprised. Has the king quarreled so much with his son that he will not arrange a nice wedding for him? But that's the least of the guy's worries right now. The wedding of members of the royal family, even if it is very modest, can stretch for several months. And the people of Pervaz need help now. In a few days, Asya walks into Carlisle's room. The girl, without greeting, asks the duke when they can leave the capital. Blackhaired wants to return home as soon as possible. However, Carlisle doesn't understand her words quite right. He thinks that Asya wants to leave the palace soon to celebrate the wedding in her lands, and the guy doesn't like it very much. They agreed that there would not even be a hint of romance in their relationship. The young man crosses his arms over his chest and rather rudely asks why Asya is in such a hurry. Is a lover waiting for her in the motherland? The black-haired man freezes in place. Carlisle's ironic question confused her a bit. After all, the girl gathers her thoughts. She tells the redhead that she wants to return through the residents of Pervaz. They need medicine and food. Now it's Carlisle's turn to be embarrassed. The boy becomes somewhat ashamed of his behavior. How did I even get the idea that she wanted romance? "This is a warrior girl," the red-haired man says in his mind. The guy assures Asha that he will try to finish everything as soon as possible. "Well, Mr. Lubar," Carlyle says to the short, chubby woman standing next to him, "you can get to work." Miss Lubar and several other women approach Asha. They are going to make her the Duke's wife. 30 minutes later, Asha returns to her fiancé's room. The girl no longer looks like a warrior. Her black, always unruly hair is now pulled back into a neat updo. Instead of a comfortable leather suit, the girl is wearing an elegant beige dress. Carlyle is impressed. He could not imagine that his bride would one day look like a real lady. Marquise says that it is difficult for her to breathe because of the corset that Mrs. Lubar made her wear. The black-haired woman's dramatic expression amuses Carlyle. The guy laughs so hard his stomach hurts. The girl frowns. Asha does not like the young man's reaction to her suffering. The redhead finally stops laughing. "If you act like that at a wedding, people will think you're unhappy," he says. The houseguests will spread rumors that Carlyle wanted to marry Asha, not the other way around. Miss Lubar asks the boy if the black-haired woman's dress is too simple for the wedding ceremony, but the young man is satisfied with everything. He says that he also prepared something for his future wife. One of the servants hands the boy a small red box. The young man opens it. Inside is the ruby necklace of Carlyle's late mother, Queen Evelyn. Mrs. Lubar is surprised that the boy wants to give Asha such an ornament. Not every groom will give his future wife the jewelry of a person who was dear to his heart. Asha herself does not understand why Carlyle did this. But the young man's next words shock the black-haired man even more. "You can buy about 100 war horses for this ornament." The girl opens her eyes wide. The redhead fastens the necklace around his future wife's neck. "Consider this my first payment." Asha does not move. She generally feels somehow strange. The girl had never worn a dress before, and no one gave her jewelry. Carlyle is about to move away from the girl when he catches a pleasant smell. The young man asks Asha if she used perfume. "So," the girl answers with a trembling voice. She is afraid that she did something wrong. Maybe she chose a bad fragrance. The black-haired woman tells her groom that the maids have been offering her floral or fruity perfumes. However, Asha does not like such sweet scents. She chose the smell of freshly cut grass. Carlyle freezes for a moment. The girl notices this and asks if everything is okay. "So, the aroma is wonderful." The young man sharply turns his head to the side. The young man reacted in this way to the perfume chosen by the girl because his late mother adored the same fragrance. Carlyle tries not to think about it. The young man smiles at the black-haired woman and says that the necklace suits her. "It seems it has found its new owner." Carlyle touches Asha's cheek with his hand. A second later, he breaks tactile contact with the black-haired man. The young man hurries to leave the room, having previously asked Mrs. Lubar to prepare a dress for the ceremony. Asha puts her hand to her chest. The girl's heart beats at a frantic speed, all because of Carlyle's touch. The black-haired man mentally notes that his hands are similar to the hands of a warrior. And she likes it. "Yes, Asha, pull yourself together," the black-haired woman says to herself in her mind. "Now we need to think about the inhabitants of Pervaz and about the benefit they will receive from this marriage." A few days later, Asha and Carlyle's ceremony. People gather in the royal church. The aristocrats discuss among themselves the wedding of the marquise and the prince. Many still cannot believe that Carlyle will marry a savage princess. In addition, the guy had a bride. This is Lady Cecilia, a fair-haired girl with golden eyes. The young man broke off his engagement with her only 2 weeks ago, when he returned from the war. They say that they quarreled a lot. However, Cecilia cannot let go of the redhead. The girl is obsessed with the idea of becoming a crown princess. For the sake of this title, she is ready to wait 3 years until Carlyle divorces Marquise Pervaz. The nobles take their seats. Musicians start playing trombones. The king, queen, and a tall man with long blonde hair enter the church. This is Gabriel Knox, the most famous priest of the empire. He has been conducting wedding ceremonies for members of royal families for several decades. In addition to professionalism in church affairs, Gabriel is also a very nice man. If he were not a priest, he would receive hundreds of love letters from aristocratic women every day. The king and queen sit on the thrones. The priest approaches the cathedral. Everyone and everything is ready for the ceremony. It remains only to wait for the bride and groom. Biting smiles on the guests' faces. The aristocrats are sure that Asha will disgrace both himself and Prince Carlyle. Finally, One of the nobles announces the names of the newlyweds. Carlisle and Asha enter the hall. The black-haired woman, as befits a bride, holds a bouquet of flowers in her hands. The girl tries not to look at the faces of the aristocrats. She does not want to see these strained smiles, this disgust in the eyes of the rich. But the aristocrats are in no hurry to discuss Asha's shortcomings. Their attention was drawn to the necklace on the girl's neck. All the nobles know that it belonged to the prince's dear person, Empress Evelyn. Such decorations are not given to anyone. Does this savage mean anything to him? Cecilia says to herself. The priest smiles and asks everyone who stood up to get a better look at the bride and groom to take their seats. The aristocrats immediately fulfill Gabriel's request. The blonde announces the start of the ceremony. Then the man begins to say something about the gods of harmony, love, and harmony. He asks them to protect the couple. The black-haired man is not at all interested in listening to all this. Residents of Pervaz believe in God, but their prayers are not so pathetic. It seems to Asha that people in the capital live very boringly, and the whole meaning of their life is to brag in front of others, to demonstrate their imaginary greatness and glory. With these thoughts, the girl does not notice how the main part of the ceremony ends. The priest tells the newlyweds that it is time to exchange wedding rings. Carlisle pulls a box from his pocket with a ruby ring inside. The boy puts the jewelry on Asha's finger. At the same time, he whispers to the girl that she will be able to sell the engagement ring at an auction. There they will offer crazy money for her. Asha won't get that much even from a jeweler. The girl nods her head and puts her fiancé's wedding ring on his finger. The priest hands Carlisle and Asha a sacred book that they must sign. Father Gabriel then gives the book to the king to seal it as a sign of blessing for this marriage. The greedy old man does it, gritting his teeth. The priest solemnly says that Carlisle and Asha are now husband and wife. The redhead looks around the room and smiles. The displeased expressions on the faces of the aristocrats amuse him. Gabriel says that the boy and girl must kiss to seal their vows. The black-haired girl is a little worried. She does not know whether her husband will be against her. He himself said that there should not be an iota of romance in their relationship. But, on the other hand, this kiss is a necessary formality. The expression on the young man's face is cheerful. Looks like the guy is up to something. After a few seconds, he leans over to the dark-haired girl and kisses her. The kiss dragged on. The old man lets go of the black-haired woman only when she lightly pushes him. Fortunately, none of the guests notice this gesture. The girl wipes her mouth with the palm of her hand. "Know the measure, Your Highness." Not to say she didn't enjoy the kiss. The black-haired girl just didn't expect this. The guy flashes his eyes and says that he wanted to have fun, because at such ceremonies you can die of boredom. The girl agrees with this. She herself was tired of standing and looking out the window. "The gods are watching you." The priest's tone is instructive. "Now is not the time for fun. Cleanse your bodies and minds." The red-haired man hums. "I'm sure the gods will understand and forgive the passion of the newlyweds." The priest does not answer this. 15 minutes later, the ceremony ends. The next day, black-haired room. Asha will have to stay in the capital. The girl orders her partners to go to Pervaz. There are certain supplies that they have to bring there. In addition, you need to prepare a room for Carlisle. A month later, the girl's friends are going to Pervaz. They are happy to return home. There is one problem. How to inform the residents of Pervaz about Asha and Carlisle's wedding. 2 hours pass. The city gate is opened. Asha's friends drive in, followed by knights. One of the inhabitants of Pervaz quietly asks the soldiers who these knights are and what they are doing here. Did someone decide to attack Pervaz? But the city is unlikely to be able to defend itself now. Years of bloody war had exhausted him. No, everything is fine. One of Asha's friends hurries to reassure the woman. These are knights from the royal palace. The marquise married the prince. People approach the boy. They are unhappy that Asha has become a member of the royal family. "How could you deliver our marquise into the clutches of those insatiable people?" someone asks. Asha's friend smiles guiltily and says that you won't change anything. Besides, it is only for 3 years. The only thing left for the warriors is to pray for Asha and prepare a room for the prince. A few days later, the capital, the royal palace. Carlisle is drinking tea in his office with his father and younger brother. The atmosphere is quite tense. The red-haired man is not very happy to see the king, because he took his title from him, believing a shameless lie about the relationship between the young prince and Vivian. But the boy does not show his anger. The young man smiles at his brother and says that he is now obliged to protect the southern part of the state. The younger prince can ask Carlisle a few questions. The young man will gladly tell the new crown prince about the nuances of military affairs. But the blonde, it seems, is not ready for this. "Why should I defend the South?" Matthias asks. The redhead frowns. Does his younger brother not know about the duties of the crown prince? Previously, these duties, as we know, were performed by Carlisle, and would continue to do so if someone did not decide to get rid of it. The redhead tells his brother that he will have to destroy local monsters and deal with small matters. The blonde casts an excited look at his father. The expression on the king's face is displeased. The man realizes that he made a mistake in depriving Carlisle of his title. Matthias's husband, of course, loves him more than his eldest son, but the blonde is still very young. In addition, he has never been on the battlefield and is unlikely to be able to cope with military problems. "Okay, I'll deal with that later," the man says in his mind. Now he is more interested in the money that Carlisle promised to allocate for the development of Pervaz. It seems to the queen that 50 million verons is too much for such a small town as Pervaz. Matthias, wanting to flatter his father, agrees with him. Bilyavai says that 1 million is quite enough for Pervaz. The redhead is annoyed by these words. Like Matthias, this child brought up in hothouse conditions can say such things. Pervaz fought for 28 years. During this time, enemy troops destroyed almost half of the city. And how many people died on the battlefield? It's scary to imagine. Now Pervaz needs to be restored. But the city lacks neither human nor material resources. The royal family is simply obliged to help. The king grits his teeth in rage. Matthias lowers his eyes. He is ashamed of his words. Red-haired stands up and with a slight smile on his face tells his father to teach Matthias better. After all, the blonde has a bunch of new responsibilities. Now he will not be able to just sit on the throne and listen to the praises of his subjects. Matthias will have to work hard. Several hours pass. The redhead's office. The boy sits in his chair and tells Asha and the burly gray man about his conversation with his father and brother. At the same time, the boy laughs loudly. You should have seen their faces. They don't understand what awaits them. But isn't running a kingdom's army a trump card? Asha asks. The black-haired man does not really understand why Carlisle does not want to continue to perform at least those duties related to the army. The young man says that it will not give him anything. The head of the army is only a link connecting the king and the military. The commander fulfills all the whims of the king and at the same time is responsible for the defeat of the army. This is such a paradox. I wonder what would happen to me if I lost even once, says Carlisle. Asha suggests that the former crown prince could have been tortured. Or, in the best case, deprive the right to the throne. The black-haired woman puts her hand to her heart. I'm starting to admire you, Your Grace. You have gone through so many trials. The redhead freezes in place. He didn't expect to hear that from his wife. The young man asks the black-haired man if it was a compliment or mockery. Of course, a compliment, says Asha. A gray-haired man intervenes in the conversation between a boy and a girl. He tells the prince in a serious tone that he must therefore tell Asha about his plans for Pervaz. The redhead puts a hand to his chin. Well, you're right, Sir Alfred, I will listen to your words. The guy seems to have a lot of respect for this man. Only Carlisle wants to start the story about his thoughts about the future, as he remembers that the gray-haired man and Asha do not know each other at all. This needs to be fixed. The boy says that the stern gray-haired sir is Viscount Giles Lafelt. He is Carlisle's mentor and his financial advisor. No matter how strange it may sound, this man, more than any other person in the kingdom, was against the wedding of Carlisle and Asha. The Viscount is skeptical about the black-haired woman. He doesn't trust her. It seems to the man that the Marquise just wants to squeeze more money out of Carlisle. To test this, the Viscount asks the girl what she knows about the boy. This question was unexpected for the black-haired woman, but she does not want to arouse the man's suspicions even more. So she tries to recall some facts about Carlisle. After a few seconds, the girl says that Carlisle is the eldest son of the king and the best knight in the kingdom. Right! The man nods his head. He also says that His Highness was born under the blessing of Ajarisi, the god of wars and victories. The prophecy came from heaven. An adult Carlisle was able to prove its truth. It was the red-haired man who maintained peace throughout the kingdom. Of course, the price Carlisle had to pay for this peace was high. The Viscount clenches his hand into a fist. And what do we see now? He says in a stern tone. A person who is ready to give his life for the sake of the state is deprived of the title of crown prince. The Viscount says that Asha must help Carlyle regain his right to the throne. The girl asks what exactly she can do for his lordship the prince. The man says that Queen Beatrice and Prince Matthias will not stop trying to tarnish His Highness's reputation. The Viscount hopes that Asha will protect Carlyle. The black-haired woman assures her husband that there will be no problems with this. Carlyle smiles softly. His wife's enthusiasm moves the redhead. The guy says he can protect himself. As for Asha, the young man wants the girl to be his support. The Viscount says that Beatrice will do anything to separate the black-haired woman and Carlyle. The Queen's actions can be unpredictable, so Asha and the redhead should be careful. The girl guesses that the Viscount is talking about treason, but, in the opinion of the black-haired woman, preparing for such a thing while in Pervaza is not very smart. If something happens, the prince won't even be able to get to the capital quickly. The redhead smiles and says he's worried about that too. While he fought, the Queen strengthened her position. Parubkov will have to try hard to defeat her. But now it is still too early to talk about the exposure of Beatrice and Matthias. First of all, the boy needs to regain his right to the throne. It is good that in this matter Carlyle has the support of the people. Asha tells the redhead to take care of himself until he moves to Pervaz. There she will no longer interfere in the affairs of the young man. Black-haired promises to do everything to ensure that he is safe. The girl hopes that she and Carlyle will spend 3 years peacefully, and then they will part just as peacefully. The young man is glad that Asha is worried about him. He asks the girl not to forget about her own safety. The black-haired man freezes in place. Will Carlyle care for her? But why does he need it? A few days later, Asha and Carlyle have to go to Pervaz today. The things with which the red-haired man promised to provide the city are already ready. There are more than 24 wagons in the royal yard. Asha is, to put it mildly, shocked by Carlyle's generosity. It is strange that the king's son, ready to choke on every penny, spends a lot of money on a foreign city. The girl is convinced that she made the right choice. If not for her marriage to Carlyle, the inhabitants of Pervaz would simply starve. The black-haired man and the boy get into the carriage. 2 hours later, the crew stops in a small town. Carlyle steps out of the carriage to greet the cheering crowd. Black-haired, observing this picture, notes that the boy is loved more than she assumed. He must have gained trust through his many battles with his enemies. The girl tells Lionel that Carlyle loves people. Is that irony? The young man's friend is surprised. Lionel says that the prince's nationality is part of the plan. The boy has to talk sweetly with ordinary people in order to win their support. Then it will be easier for him to defeat Matthias and Beatrice. After a few minutes, the red-haired man returns to the carriage. He asks Lionel where else they will need to repeat this show. In Ovendam. The man looks at the list. We'll be there in 2 days. The black-haired man does not take his reproachful gaze from Carlyle, and he feels it. The young man asks the girl what happened. It seems to Asha that the boy is not being very honest with those people. They are so sincerely happy about the arrival of the crown prince, but he only pretends that he likes communication with the people. Are you saying I shouldn't do this? The guy asks. The young man says that people love him, and he is ready to be their god. There is nothing like that here. Asha agrees with this. You don't need to look for a reason where there is none, says the girl in her mind. Evening. The crew stops near a lake. The moonlight reflects off the surface of the water. There is silence all around, only the quiet rustling of trees is heard. One of Carlyle's knights orders his friends to make a fire in order to scare away wild animals. Also, security guards must be on duty around the crew. After a few minutes, the redhead's assistants set up the tent. One of the servants tells Ash and Carlyle that he has moved the things they need there. The redhead smiles. Thanks, if I need anything, I'll call. The servant says goodbye to the couple. The girl tells the boy that the servant must have accidentally moved their belongings to the same tent. Do you really want to sleep apart from me? The red-haired man tilts his head to the side. Asha, stuttering, answers that the young man misunderstood everything a little. But Carlyle doesn't listen to her. He tells the girl not to make the servants suffer and just follow him. The boy gets up and leaves the carriage. The tent of the black-haired girl and the boy. Carlyle is standing in front of Asha in a pair of pants. The girl holds the boy's shirt in her hands. I will try to do everything right. 20 minutes ago, Asha leaves the crew. The black-haired girl is a little worried. Yes, she had to sleep next to men in war, but it was in the open air. And those men were only her brothers. What can you say about Carlisle? It's not that Asha was brought up with the same strictness as the girls in the capital, but she still can't think calmly about sleeping with a boy. The black-haired woman goes to the lake to wash herself. She scoops up water with her palms and pours it on her face. The girl promises herself that she will always protect Pervaz, even at the cost of his own life. The girl goes to the tent. Carlisle emerges from behind the tree. He watched the black-haired man all the time. The guy must admit that his wife is quite an interesting person. At least she's not like the haughty, silly girls that royals usually marry. After a few minutes, the young man returns to the tent. There he sees Asha spreading a blanket on the floor. "Are you going to sleep on the floor?" The red-haired man did not expect this. The girl says that she has no other option. Carlisle takes off his black shirt. The boy looks carefully at Asha. He wonders how a girl will react to a half-naked man in front of her. But the young man probably forgot that his wife fought side by side with men almost all her life. Black-haired calmly tells Carlisle something about cold waters, and this annoys the young man. "She looks at me like an animal and she doesn't care if I'm dressed or not." But the red-haired man himself said that they were married only on paper. So why be surprised? But now Carlisle regrets his words about the lack of romance. It's somehow not interesting at all. The young man decides to have a little fun. He smiles at the girl. Already from his sly facial expression, the black-haired man understands that something is wrong here. Carlisle asks Ash to help him put on his nightgown. The girl opens her eyes wide. The redhead's behavior is strange and completely illogical. However, Asha decides to listen to him. After all, what's the point? The girl apologizes to the boy for not thinking to help him. That's how it all happened. Asha is now carefully examining the shirt, ignoring the half-naked Carlisle. The guy smiles slyly and twinkles his eyes. But the black-haired man ignores even this provocation. The girl asks the young man to extend his hand. He fulfills her request. Asha, without touching the red-haired man, deftly puts a shirt on him. The black-haired one fastens the buttons and tells the boy that everything is ready. He is silent. "Something is wrong?" asks the girl. The young man says that everything is fine. He's just a little sad. The black-haired girl wonders why, but Carlisle does not want to answer her questions. And what to answer? The red-haired man cannot say that he wanted to play with Asha. The young man lies down on the bed and turns his back to the girl. Asha thinks that the prince's displeasure is caused by the fact that she somehow put the shirt on him wrong. Black-haired decides not to question Carlisle about anything anymore. After all, if he doesn't like something, he can just say so. Why pretend to be an offended child? The girl herself decides to go to bed. He and Carlisle would have to wake up early tomorrow. The guy says he's going to turn off the lights. Black-haired does not object. The young man casts an excited look at the girl and asks if she is comfortable. The blanket seems too thin to Carlisle. Asha just smiles at this. She slept and not in such conditions. The redhead asks the girl to tell a little about Pervaz. Parabak wants to learn something about the city in which he will live for 3 years. And it's not nice to come to someone else's land unprepared. The black-haired boy asks what exactly he is interested in. Climate, people, geographical location. "Let's start with the climate," says Carlisle. "Are winters really that cold there?" It is difficult for Asha to answer this question, because she has nothing to compare it to. During the 22 years of her life, the black-haired girl almost never left Pervaz for a long time. But according to the merchants, it is so bitterly cold there that you can freeze all parts of your body. The redhead bursts into laughter. Asha's words cheered him up. "Did you really cut off the head of the leader of the Lurs?" the boy asks as soon as he calms down. He is interested in learning something not only about Pervaz, but also about his wife. Various things were said about Asha, and the red-haired man wanted to check what was true and what was empty talk. Black-haired says in an indifferent tone that she really killed the leader of the Lurs. The young man assumes that he must have been a capable warrior. This is true, but the leader of the barbarians definitely did not reach Amir Pervaz. Asha says this with sadness in her voice. She is very sad without her father and brothers. The girl says that thanks to Amir and his sons, she managed to remove the necklace from the neck of her main enemy, which preserved his youth. This thing was the secret of the power of the leader of the Lurkians. Carlisle suggests that Amir Pervaz was a very skilled warrior. Asha says that her father was loved by all residents of Pervaz. He was the only one who did not surrender the city to the enemies. Amir fought for his motherland until his last breath. The redhead looks at the ceiling. Amir Pervaz should not have died on the battlefield, the young man says in his mind. He was a real ruler who every day chose freedom for his possessions. And his sons and daughter helped him in this. Asha became the same as her father. She is also ready to give everything for the sake of peace in her motherland. So she received a reward from the emperor for her courage and defiance of the enemy, thinks the red-haired man. Maybe this girl has surpassed her father. The boy begins to respect Asha. He likes her courage, bravery, and devotion to her people. Tell me about your brothers, Carlyle asks. How many were there? But Asha does not answer this question. Marquis Pervaz. The boy looks at the floor and sees that the black-haired man is fast asleep. Capital. One of the rooms of the royal palace. I can't do this, Matthias yells. You want me to go fight monsters instead of that douchebag Carlyle? The mere thought of battle causes fear in the baked prince. Beatrice tries to calm her son down. She puts her hand on his shoulder and says that she has already thought of everything. A few days later, Pervaz Carlyle and Ashi's carriage goes over potholes. The redhead looking out the window says the situation is worse than he expected. In Pervaza, everything is not as it should be. All the surroundings are empty fields. Yes, there is a lot of work here. Carlyle asks the black-haired man how much money he planned to get from the king. About 500,000 varins, the girl answers. The redhead snorts. He is sure that Asha named such an amount on purpose. This is catastrophically small for such a rundown city. But don't worry, you drew the best card in the deck, the young man says smugly. Asha understands that he is telling the truth. Hardly anyone would be as generous as the redhead. 15 minutes pass. The crew stops at the old Pervaz family castle. Asha gets out of the carriage first. The girl warns Carlyle that her house is not in the best shape. But the redhead doesn't care. A person who has lived on the front line for many years does not care where to sleep. Carlyle is not at all like his gentle brother, accustomed to comfort. Husband and wife approach the stairs leading to the castle. The couple is greeted by a black-haired man, one of the black-haired woman's best friends, Dakar. He bows to Asha and Carlyle. It is clear that the man is worried. He had not yet received members of the royal family in Pervaza. Asha touches Decker's shoulder to reassure her friend. Blackhair and Carlyle enter the palace. Servants and maids bow their heads to the girl and boy. Red-haired knights stand outside. Are we going to stay here? One of them says displeasedly. Asha looks around. The redhead freezes in place. He did not expect the palace knights to behave so rudely. But now is not the time for quarrels. The guy just ignores the words of his subject. Where I live, Carlyle wonders. He decided to quickly change the subject to avoid an awkward silence. The young man hopes that Asha was not too affected by the knight's words. Black-haired pretends that nothing happened. She says her assistants have prepared the entire second floor for Carlyle. The guy is somewhat surprised. The second floor in castles is where the lord lives with his family. Black-haired says that she can live on the first floor. Still, Carlyle is above her in status. Besides, he is a guest, and it is customary for guests to select the best rooms. The guy smiles. Thank you. Asha goes outside. Fussy servants carry the redhead's belongings to the second floor. Decker approaches the girl. We have arranged a new room for you. Do you want to see it? Black-haired does not object. The girl and the man return to the castle, discussing something. Carlyle notices them. For some reason, Asha's friend arouses the boy's suspicions. Asha's bedroom. There is a fluffy light carpet on the stone floor. A large double bed stands against one of the walls. Yes, the servants really tried to arrange the room. But Ashi is funny, all because of the size of her bed. Is this your doing? The girl asks one of her friends through tears. The man uncertainly says that the capital's nobles sleep on such beds. He wanted to create something similar for the marquise. The black-haired man tells the young man that he did very well. The girl smiles sadly. She notices a colossal difference between Pervaz and the capital, even in the eyes of her dear friends. This motivates the girl to work honestly for the prosperity of the city. Asha thanks her husband. The girl notices a vase with pink tulips on the bedside table. In Pervaza, flowers mean the end of war. That is why the maids prepared such a small surprise for the black-haired woman. The dark-haired woman turns to the woman in the black dress and says with a soft smile, "Good job, Dello." The woman thanks for the praise. Decker asks Asha if there is still a vacancy for a butler. Yes, the girl answers. All this time Della was doing his work. But we will definitely find someone. Della advises Asha to hire a maid to run small errands. After all, now Asha is the wife of a member of the royal family. Many people are watching her. Black Hair asks if there is anyone Della can recommend for the position. The girl is surprised when she learns that the woman has already found the right person. A cute girl with light brown hair and eyes of the same color enters the room. She smiles at Asha. Greetings, Your Grace. My name is Nina Colon. Della lists the duties of the new maid. She will clean your rooms, cook for you, help you bathe, comb your hair, and take care of your clothes. It is not usual for a black-haired woman that someone will help her take care of her own hygiene. Della says that during the war it was a luxury, but now everything will change. Asha is forced to agree with the woman. In addition, Nina gives the impression of a well-educated and hardworking girl. You can rest, says the black-haired one to his friends. Della and Derek are asked by the black-haired man to stay. When the rest of the people leave the room, the girl tells her most loyal assistants that deliveries to Pervaz will resume. Because of this, conflicts may arise between the prince's people and Asha's people. But the black-haired man is not going to ask his assistants to restrain themselves if the knights behave badly. The girl made a mutually beneficial agreement with Carlisle, not a slave contract. She will stick to this position and asks Della and Derek to do the same. The next day, Carlisle's office. The boy is talking to Lionel. The red-haired man says that he has already prepared supplies for Pervaz for next month. True, the boy is surprised that Asha's people did not put a single coin in their pockets. Lionel smiles. Those who have shared grief usually stick together. The red-haired man says in his mind that you can't tell by the appearance of the girl's assistants. The boy is especially interested in Derek. This black-haired man is always hanging around Asha, and Carlisle doesn't like it very much. Even though I'm related to the Marquise, the young man narrows his eyes. It doesn't mean she can't betray me. The red-haired man asks Lionel to carefully find out something about Asha's immediate environment. Most of all, the young man needs information about Derek. Lionel tells the barman that he has already learned something about that man. Derek is the eldest son of the Donovan family, which was a vassal of Emir Pervaz. They even wanted to marry the girl to a black-haired man. Carlisle smirks. So big and clumsy. They'd make a great couple. There are noticeable notes of jealousy in the young man's voice. At the same time in the capital, royal church. Priest Gabriel is sitting on a bench. His hands are clasped in a lock, a gentle smile plays on his face. A man prays to God. Suddenly someone enters the room. Gabriel immediately greets the guest, or rather the guest. Queen Beatrice came to the priest. The woman sits down next to Gabriel. I want to discuss something with you. It concerns the future of our kingdom. Do you have a moment? The priest says that talking to the queen is a great honor for him. I have as much time as I want for you, adds the man. But the expression on Gabriel's face does not quite match his words. A week later, Carlisle and Asha's marriage benefited Pervaz. The streets became cleaner and there were more people on them. Now Asha, as befits a good ruler, walks around the city assessing the situation. The girl meets wounded soldiers who are already undergoing treatment. They praise the black-haired woman and thank her. Asha also checks the distribution of provisions. At one of the aid stations, the girl sees Derek. He sorts grain and cereals into bags. The black-haired woman asks the man if there is enough food for all the inhabitants of the city. Yes, smiles Derek. People are happy. The girl praises her assistant. It was he who helped her distribute the provisions correctly. The black-haired man is wondering what is being distributed today. Beans, salt, flour, and yeast, says the man. Residents of Pervaz will finally be able to make bread. The public oven has already been repaired, so it is quite possible that the aroma of bread will spread throughout the neighborhood tonight. Derek scowls and tells the black-haired that tomorrow they will get the seeds. The husband and other helpers of the girl are racking their brains over how to plan the sowing. We will finally be able to grow wheat on our land, says Derek enthusiastically. I never expected to see this at my age. The black-haired man notices the glint in Derek's eyes. This shine reminds the girl that she did not fight for Pervaz in vain. Your Highness! Suddenly someone calls Asha. A dark-haired guy asks a girl to come to the workshop. It is necessary to accept wood. Take care of everything here, the black-haired man says softly to Derek. After a few minutes, the Marquis and the boy approach the workshop. Asha freezes when she sees hundreds, no, thousands of felled trees. What it is? Asks the black-haired man. The boy replies that Prince Carlisle bought all the surplus wood from the inhabitants of the northern villages, and the imported trees were made fire-resistant. There is only one question in the head of the black-haired woman. When did he manage to bring all this here? After arriving in Pervaz, Carlisle had no time to deal with the organization of wood supplies. Did he agree on everything in the capital? Black-haired once again looks around the yard of the workshop covered with trees. If he made my dreams come true, I'm ready to do anything for him. One of the prince's men approaches the marquise. His Highness wants to see you. Asha replies that she will come to Carlisle's office in a few minutes. The black-haired one knocks on the door and enters the room that the servants have set up for the prince's work. The guy greets the girl. The black-haired one bows to him. You called me. The young man asks Asha what the situation is in Pervaza now. The girl says that thanks to the prince's generosity, everything in the city is even better than she dreamed. Marquise thanks her husband. Carlisle called the black-haired man for a reason. The prince wants to test her honesty. He provided a lot of money and goods for Pervaz, but he does not know how they were used. And, sorry, exclaims the black-haired man, I should have informed you in advance. The girl says that she will show the prince a report on the allocation of the budget. Just wait a minute. Asha is already going to leave the room. The papers are left in my room. Carlisle is surprised at such promptness. He wants to stop the girl, but she no longer hears. Lionel huffs and tells the prince that he has no reason to suspect Asha of dishonesty. Marquisa is not one of those people who would begin to appropriate money. Carlisle leans back on his throne. Is that even possible? She could take as much as she wanted, and it would not be a violation of the law. Misappropriation of public funds is a very common practice in the Kingdom of Chad. The redhead simply cannot believe that Asha is different from the other rulers. The fact that the girl has already made a budget plan speaks of her care, but the redhead is convinced that there are certain inaccuracies in her plans. Lionel shakes his head. The prince is still stubborn. He is forever looking for some reason in everything. Although for a man of war, this is not surprising. A gasping Asha bursts into the office. She has several notebooks and a roll of paper in her hands. Black-haired lays it all on the prince's table. Here is the plan for using the materials you have given us. I also brought plans for the distribution of food and medicine. The guy starts looking through notebooks and mentally counting expenses. Surprisingly, the results of his calculations coincide with the results of Asha's calculations. The girl really didn't take a penny. In addition, the report is simply perfectly structured. Great work, says red-haired Ashi, but the verification is not yet complete. The young man asks the black-haired woman whether she has signed any of the money or materials provided by him in her own name. The girl says that she does not understand what it is about. I'm talking about money for your treasury, the red-haired man says loudly. It seems to him that Asha is only pretending to be an honest person. However, Carlisle is wrong again. Black-haired asks him how replenishing the treasury will help rebuild Pervaz. Besides, it is not very right to shove public money into one's pocket. Do you already know what you're going to do with the necklace and wedding ring I gave you? The red-haired man still does not lose hope of catching his wife in some dark business. She can't be that perfect. But the girl has an answer to this question as well. The black-haired one smiles and says that he is going to sell the jewelry at the auction. But she will do it after the divorce, so that stupid rumors do not spread through the kingdom. With the money earned, the girl wants to buy a herd of war horses. Carlisle sighs. He is forced to admit his defeat. Asha Pervaz is truly an incredibly honest ruler. The boy tells the girl that she can be free. He already found out everything he wanted. Asha bows to the young man and leaves the room. God! Carlisle taps his fingers to a rhythm on his desk. She's even figured out what she's going to do with the money from the jewelry sale. Are you disappointed? Lionel asks with surprise in his voice. He does not understand what caused the mood of the prince. However, it turned out exactly as Carlisle wanted. Asha does not interfere in his personal affairs and properly disposes of the allocated money. Olish, says the young man. Better tell me, what is the situation in the royal palace? Church. The priest and Beatrice are facing each other. They just finished praying to God. Gabriel says that Beatrice can start the story of what happened. Just be honest, please, says the priest. The queen says that if Carlisle becomes king, the kingdom will have a dark future. A boy who has been killing people since childhood will not be able to become a good and generous ruler. Gabriel mouth. He feels some feigned pity in Beatrice's tone. The queen did not listen to his pleas for sincerity. But the man does not talk about it. Now is not the time to spoil the relationship with Beatrice. Instead, Gabriel agrees with the woman. For example, the military ruler will distance the inhabitants of the kingdom from God's word. The queen folds her hands in prayer and asks Gabriel to stop it. The woman wants the priest to help her son Matthias become the next king. Gabriel says that in return the queen must promise something. So what? It seems that Beatrice is ready to do anything to make the priest her ally. Gabriel lowers his eyes. If Matthias takes the throne, Chad must become a sacred state. The queen is somewhat surprised by such a demand. The woman asks what sacred state means. Gabriel smiles out of the corner of his mouth. This is life according to Allah's laws. The queen says that she also believes in the correctness of obedience to the word of God. However, the woman is in no hurry to agree to Gabriel's proposal. Beatrice needs to think things through. The queen walks to the exit of the church. I will wait for you. The priest smiles. As soon as the door closes behind the woman, the friendliness disappears from Gabriel's face. Summer Pervaz. Carlisle and Lionel fight on swords. The redhead wins. He tells his friend not to be upset. According to the boy's observations, Lionel is getting better every time. The man says that everything is fine. He doesn't even dare to think about defeating Carlisle, a man blessed by the god of war. That's good. The young man puts his hand on his friend's shoulder. Although Pervaz is known for its harsh weather conditions, in summer it is quite hot here, as in other cities of the kingdom. The redhead takes off his shirt and washes himself with cold water. Lionel says that the marquise is working on the revival of agriculture in the region. Carlisle smiles. Yes, she was very excited to plant the plants. The red-haired man asks the man if they have already sorted out the things they brought from the capital. Almost, Lionel bows. He is surprised that Carlisle is so interested in the affairs of Pervaza, and the redhead gets along quite well with his wife. Sometimes he even speaks of her with some warmth. But maybe it's only for the better. If a member of the royal family and the mistress of Pervazu unite, they will be able to deprive Matthias of the right to the throne. However, the problem is that the prince's people do not accept Pervaz. Lionel says that the attitude of Carlisle's servants towards the townspeople may have upset the marquis. The redhead says it can't be. He forbade his people to go beyond the second floor. The boy says in a displeased tone that Lionel should keep an eye on the local aristocrats. If you don't pay attention to them, you can miss something important. The man says that he understood everything. Lionel looks away from the prince. Well, I'll tell him next time. A few hours later, Pervaz Castle. Two maids are walking down the corridor, a stranger from the palace and Nina. The latter accidentally pushes the royal maid. Do you even look where you're going? The girl from the palace crosses her arms on her chest. She tells Nina that she should respect those higher in rank. Wasn't this taught in Pervaz? Carlisle's maid adds sarcastically. She points her finger at Nina. The girl from the palace thinks that the prince's maid is higher in status than the marquise's maid. Should I explain why your action offended me? Carlisle's maid lifts her chin. Nina bows to the girl and apologizes. She says that she did not know about such a hierarchy. The redhead's maid walks past Nina. Be more careful. Although what can you expect from a marquise's servant? The girl says that Nina is as rude and ill-mannered as the black-haired one. Maid Ashi clenches her hands into fists. How can she insult my lady? Says the girl in her mind. The marquise put an end to the terrible war with the barbarians and became the heroine of Pervaz. And now the brave girl is working day and night to restore the city. How could some girl from the palace talk about her like that? Nina begins to cry out of resentment for her mistress. Della notices the girl. The older maid is excited. She had never seen the cheerful Nina cry. So, something serious happened. The woman asks the girl what is the matter. Nina, sobbing, says that the servant of His Highness called the marquise rude and ill-mannered. Della sighs. She assumed that Carlisle's servants would behave very rudely in Pervaza. They consider local residents, including the marquise, to be savages. In order for the prince's servants to finally start respecting the black-haired girl, her people need to try. Della puts her hands on Nina's shoulders and smiles. We're going to raise our lady status. Derek's office. Della enters the room. The black-haired man greets the woman and asks what happened. Usually the maids solve all the issues among themselves. I learned that the servants of His Highness insulted Our Lady at Nina's, says the woman. The rudeness of people from the palace knows no boundaries. Something must be done to avoid serious clashes. Derek clenches his hands into fists in rage. He knew, of course, that the people of Carlisle hated Pervaz with all their hearts. But to humiliate the girl who saved almost the entire kingdom, this is unheard of audacity. Derek says he will discuss the behavior of the prince's servants with the Marchioness. Della thinks this is not a good idea. The lady may get upset. It is better to contact Carlisle directly. But the man does not really trust the prince. Derek decides to tell the Marquise all the same. Several hours pass. Carlisle's office. The guy works with papers. One of the servants tells the young man that the Marquise has arrived. The girl enters the room. The red-haired man turns his head in the direction of his wife. "You are very timely. I need to tell you something." But the young man falls silent when he sees the expression on Asha's face. The black-haired woman is outraged by something. Her hands are clenched into fists. It seems that a second, and the girl will explode with anger. The boy had never seen Asha so angry. He carefully asks her what happened. "I have a business for you, Your Grace," the girl says coldly. Carlisle says, listening to the girl carefully. Asha asks the young man to talk to the people he brought from the capital. The servants of the prince constantly quarrel with the servants of the Marquise. The black-haired man hoped that Carlisle would deal with this to avoid future problems. The redhead puts his hand on the papers and sighs. Every day, Asha surprises him more and more. The girl is insulted and she worries about her servants. No aristocrat the redhead knew did that. Carlisle decides to play with Asha a little. He smiles at the girl and gently says that perhaps the conflicts between the servants are a misunderstanding. Lionel is about to say something but doesn't have time. Asha reminds the prince about the contract they signed a few months ago. The black-haired woman's voice has palpable notes of steel. But Carlisle is not afraid of this. He calmly replies that he fulfills all the terms of the agreement. Pervaz was provided with food, medicines, and wood. Asha asks Lionel to bring the contract. A moment later, the required sheet of paper is already lying on his lordship's table. Asha pushes the contract to the prince. "Before asking you for financial assistance, I set several requirements. And among these demands is respect for the residents of Pervaz. Although the prince and his servants are respectable people, it should not be forgotten that they are only guests in the city of Asha, and guests must observe elementary rules of behavior." Blackhaired says that if the inhabitants of Pervaz change their attitude towards the prince, he will not achieve his desired goal. Carlisle blinks and asks what will happen if he ignores the black-haired woman's warning. The guy is playing with fire and knows it very well. But when the girl answers in an icy tone that Carlisle had better listen to her, the redhead decides to stop the game. The boy asks Lionel to bring all the servants who have come from the capital. Carlisle wants to have a serious talk with them and punish the culprits. The redhead's friend leaves the room. An hour later, the main hall of the castle. Asha, Lionel, and Carlisle are standing on the stairs. The prince's servants and maids, his knights, gathered below. While they do not know why the young master called them, but from the expression on Carlisle's face, the people of the palace guess that the boy will say not very pleasant things. Lionel, unlike his friend, smiles faintly. The man is glad that the daredevils will finally get what they deserve. As for Asha, the girl keeps a cold calm. Finally, Carlisle begins to speak. "I heard that someone in the audience insulted my wife." "Is that right, Asha?" asks the young man. The girl opens her eyes wide in surprise. Carlisle never addressed her by name, but also universally. But the girl quickly guesses that the guy did it for a reason. He called the black-haired woman's name to show his subjects that he recognized her as his wife. Such a man's behavior should increase Asha's authority in the eyes of people from the capital. The black-haired one says out loud that she was indeed insulted by someone on the Carlisle staff. Those who serve in the Pervaz castle gave evidence. Carlisle says that Asha's maids must remember people's faces, how they insulted their lady. The guy asks them to point out the culprits. Several maids immediately point their fingers at two girls in white aprons. They are indignant. "We didn't do anything. This is slander." But Carlisle doesn't listen. He orders them to come forward. One of the maids says that she did not say anything bad about the Marquise. "She's just trying to survive us," exclaims the girl. Asha freezes in place from such audacity. Carlisle just grunts. Lionel's words about the unsatisfactory behavior of the people from the palace turned out to be true. The maid opens her eyes wide. She realizes what she just said. Carlyle crosses his arms over his chest and says coldly, "Repeat what you called my wife?" Asha casts a surprised look at the boy. The girl did not think that Carlyle would protect her so much. The maid lowers her head and answers in a trembling voice, "Marquise, your grace. Is that something offensive?" Carlyle smiles. Only he, her legal husband, can call Asha that way. To all other black-haired women, her highness is a princess, and it is not discussed. Red-haired turns to his friend. "Lionel, punish the guilty for treating their lady with contempt." The man is surprised by Carlyle's strictness. After moving to Pervaz, the boy behaved like a cheerful, carefree young man. He fought with swords, fooled around, walked around town, and sometimes played pranks on his wife. But now he turned on the hard ruler. Too hard. If everyone who insulted Asha is punished, the prince will have few people left. Carlyle admits that Lionel is right. "Then," the lad's eyes flashed with an unkind light, "just cut out their tongues." There is dead silence in the hall for a moment. No one expected this from the red-haired man. People think that the young man was just joking, but his face is surprisingly serious. The servants beg the boy to take pity on them. They promise that no more bad words will be said about Asha or Pervaz. The redhead is silent. Asha decides to intervene because she understands that if she does nothing, this story will end badly. The girl puts her hand to her forehead and asks the prince to stop. "Asha." He does not understand what is the matter. Black-haired says that the guilty should not be punished in this way. "Do you want more?" suggests the prince. Asha says that her only wish is for the servants to respect each other. And that's all. One of Carlyle's maids drops to her knees and begins to sob in fear. Asha feels sorry for the girl, even though she offended her. However, Carlyle sees no cause for pity. Servants have done badly and must be punished for their behavior. Asha sighs. "Even I sometimes have doubts that the role of a princess suits me," admits the black-haired woman. "I'm sure your people also have such thoughts." In addition, Pervaza currently lacks hands. What will the prince do while his subjects recover from the punishment? Carlyle asks what to do then. Asha directs her gaze at the culprits and calmly but firmly says, "Life in this city isn't the best, but while you're here we have to support each other. Even if there is a conflict, you should try to understand the opponent, and for this you need to respect your neighbors." Asha understands that Pervaz is harsh for the people of the capital, but this city protects the borders. The inhabitants of Pervaz risk their lives to prevent the barbarians from advancing deep into the kingdom. "Don't insult my people. That's all I want to ask of you," says Asha. Carlyle smiles. He is proud of his wife's behavior. Instead of shouting and blaming everyone around her, she understood the situation and resolved the conflict peacefully. The ability to negotiate is a talent important to any ruler. The servants bow to the girl. "Thank you, Your Highness Princess." Carlyle, who wants to frighten the servants a little more, tells them to behave politely. If one of them dares to offend a resident of Pervaza again, Asha will not be so generous. The black-haired woman is about to leave the hall when the boy stops her. He smiles at the girl and invites her to have dinner together to celebrate the truce. Asha asks what kind of truce we could be talking about if there was no battle. She walks towards the exit of the hall, leaving Carlyle alone with the servants. It seems that the black-haired one is not in a very good mood. The guy scratches the back of his head. "What do I have to say, Grandpa, to get her to agree to have dinner with me?" Carlyle can't just ask Asha to go to dinner because of his pride. The capital, the church. Beatrice again came to the priest Gabriel. The woman decided to accept his offer regarding the sacred empire. The man is smiling. He says the queen made the right choice. Beatrice wants to ask Gabriel for advice. Carlyle went to Pervaz. "Invading the city is very difficult. How should we be?" The priest smiles slyly and says in the tone of a great connoisseur that the redhead is trying to protect his most powerful weapon. But God Lovato watches his subjects and helps them, so the queen will still have an opportunity to harm Carlyle. The woman is interested in how exactly. "Oh, don't worry." The priest puts his hand to his chest. "You'll understand when the time comes." The queen smiles. In her eyes, the hope of gaining power appears. Beginning of September, Pervaz. The field, which only half a year ago resembled a desert, is now sown with wheat. People collect ears of corn in small baskets. Suddenly, the workers notice dark clouds approaching Pervaz. The last time this happened was 28 years ago, when war broke out in the city. A gray-haired man in a straw hat shouts to other people to hide in caves. He himself is going to the marquise to tell her about the sudden attack of the barbarians. Pervaz Castle. Carlisle's office. The redhead looks out the window. In general, this city seems more stable to me now than when I first arrived. The young man suggests that maybe Asha and her assistants should stop handing out supplies. Most people already have a job and can buy the necessary products with money. Lionel, who is sorting through the letters, tells his friend that Asha herself knows what to do with provisions. If a girl gives it to people for free, then so be it. In general, the marquise manages Pervaz very well, and Carlisle can't help but agree with that. During these 6 months of living in the city, the boy also changed his attitude towards Asha's environment, in particular, towards Derek. The young man is surprised by the diligence and intelligence of this black-haired man. Lionel says that all the inhabitants of Pervaz are amazing. In some sense, they are more active than the people of the capital. All the rumors about Pervaz, which spread throughout the kingdom, turned out to be just fiction. This small town has a faith and loyalty that cannot be found almost anywhere else. Lionel hands Carlisle one of the letters. This is from the Earl's family. The redhead smiles as he finishes reading. He says that the Count sent proof of his loyalty to Pervaz. It seems that this man expects that in 3 years Carlisle will indeed divorce his wife. The Count wants to marry his daughter Cecilia to a red-haired man. Lionel says he wouldn't be surprised if the redhead himself is in love with this smart and ambitious girl. Carlisle is indignant. Why did you decide that? Lionel replies that it's all because of balls where the guy danced only with Cecilia. Carlisle says that dancing is not proof of love. He spent time with the Count's daughter because the situation demanded it. The young man is sure that Cecilia does not feel anything for him either. All she needs is my title. The red-haired man crosses his arms on his chest. He is amused by Lionel's naivety. It is surprising that this aristocrat knows nothing about formal relationships or relationships for the sake of gain. But the red-haired man is not going to explain all this to him. The young man does not want to talk about Cecilia. Suddenly, Carlisle and Lionel hear someone shouting from the street. "We're under attack! We are evacuating!" The redhead reacts to this calmly. For a man who has spent most of his life on the battlefield, news of an attack is not unusual. Asha's room. The black-haired man had already been informed about the attack. She discusses the plan of action with Decker. After the end of the war, the size of the army was reduced, and the remaining weapons became obsolete. The black-haired man suggests that the girl turn to Carlisle for help. The prince must know exactly what to do. After all, he is also an experienced military man. That girl doesn't want to do that. She believes that it is necessary to act strategically. Most likely Pervaz was attacked by a small group of barbarians. The black-haired woman can handle them herself. She wants to leave her husband in the city for an older one. Those close to the black-haired woman must obey all the boy's orders. The girl says that she will set off as soon as she tells His Highness about the expedition. A few minutes later, the Marquise enters Carlisle's office. The guy greets the black-haired one and with a smile on his face asks what happened. The girl is a little annoyed by the red-haired man's behavior. Asha is sure that he already knows about the barbarian attack. Why pretend to be a blind and deaf fool? But the black-haired man does not show his displeasure. Now is not the time for that. The girl says that Pervaz was attacked by the Graham tribe. The guy asks if he can help the girl with anything. The black-haired woman says she has one request for her husband. If I die, Asha lowers her eyes, become Margrave of Pervaz. Still, you've done a lot for this city. Carlisle agrees to do so. True, the boy does not take Asha's words about death seriously. He decides to make fun of the girl, which is in his style. You don't want to ask anything more? He says. Asha accepts these taunts. If you marry another woman and have children, make one of them the ruler of Pervaz. Carlisle is unhappy with the girl's acting. Somehow not romantic. The guy gets up. He wants to show his wife how to pretend to be a couple in love. The young man approaches Asha and touches her forehead with his lips. The girl opens her eyes wide. She hadn't expected this from Carlisle. The boy smiles. May Agaris bless you. Black-haired leaves the castle. Outside, she and her army are preparing for battle, leading horses, polishing swords and shields, putting on armor. After a few minutes, the defenders of Pervaz set out on the road. Carlisle, watching his wife from the window, takes out a pair of binoculars from a desk drawer. The guy wants to see what the black-haired girl is like in battle. He smiles. Should be fun. But the young man quickly changes his mind when he sees Asha rushing towards the enemy army all by herself. She left all her warriors behind. "Idiot!" Carlyle exclaims. He does not understand the logic of the black-haired woman's actions. How a commander can go on the offensive, even without help. This is a very big and unjustified risk. Lionel asks the redhead if it would be better to send knights to help the girl. Although there are not many barbarians, but knowing Asha's desperation, this skirmish could end tragically. But Carlyle does not share his friend's opinion. Black-haired is unlikely to accept the help of knights from the palace. She does not trust them. The guy decides to wait a little longer. The next moment, he sees Asha beheading the head of the enemy tribe. The girl does it in one easy movement honed to perfection. "Following!" exclaims the black-haired man. She lets her enemies know that competing with her is pointless. Nevertheless, there are brave people who want to test their strength. The same thing happens to them as to their leader. The black-haired woman, whose clothes are stained with someone else's blood, smiles. It may seem strange, but now Asha feels happy. She is in her element, elements of battle. Carlyle says his wife is crazy. The years spent in the war made Asha a cold-blooded warrior who is not afraid of anything. The redhead is forced to admit that the girl is an excellent strategist. Her tactics for fighting enemies are dangerous, but effective. The boy has no doubts that it was Asha who killed the leader of the Lur tribe. The young man smiles. Now he wants more than anything to leave this cold castle and destroy the barbarians side by side with his incredible wife. Carlyle understands why Asha didn't call him with her. The girl wanted to demonstrate her fighting skills to the boy, and she managed to impress the redhead. Suddenly, the boy notices another detachment of enemy troops moving in the direction of Pervaz. It seems to Lionel that the situation is starting to get out of control. The prince played. It is time for him to understand that the battle with the enemy tribe is not a game. Asha is certainly a talented commander, but right now Pervaz doesn't have enough warriors to overcome Graham's 2 raids. If the girl's army falls, the aliens will invade the city and destroy everything that the redhead and Asha have been working on. The young man, who still manages to remain calm, says that the time has indeed come. Carlyle waves his hand solemnly. "Prepare our knights. Let them destroy these vile rats now." Dionel puts his hand to his chest and bows to the prince. "I obey." The man leaves the room. Carlyle contemplates joining his wife. After all, one more professional soldier won't hurt Pervaz. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, Asha notices a second detachment of enemy troops moving from the side of the mountains. The girl is shocked. She did not expect that the enemies would be able to cross Mount Cruz. The black-haired man tries to pull himself together. Now she must do everything so that the enemy troops do not get directly to the city. "Don't let them get here, Derek," Asha shouts. A good plan to fight the barbarians appeared in the girl's head. It consists in the fact that Derek, Daniello, and 100 other soldiers will go to meet the second squad to surprise the enemy. But there is one problem. As we already know, Pervaz has very few soldiers. If they split, the barbarians will quickly destroy them because they are superior in manpower. Suddenly, one of Pervaz's soldiers shouts that help has arrived. Blackhair and Derek look around. They see an echelon of knights, at the head of which is Prince Carlyle. Asha, despite her surprise, does not ask the redhead about anything. This is not the time to be distracted. The girl tells Derek that His Highness will deal with the detachment on Mount Cruz. Pervaz's army will remain in this place. The black-haired man begins to chop off the heads of his enemies. One of the barbarians understands that everything has not turned out in his favor. He orders the Grahams to retreat. Asha watches with wide eyes as the barbarians leave the outskirts of the city with cries of frustration. Pervaz was able to repel the enemy in a few hours. And all thanks to His Highness. This night, the wounded are being treated in Pervaz Castle. People are tired but happy. Pervaz lost much less than he could have. Asha wants to see her husband. Derek says he was glad to see the redhead on the battlefield. But now the man is worried for some reason. Carlyle's nobility seems to him ostentatious and suspicious. Why did the prince risk his knights for Pervaz? In the contract that the boy and Asha signed, there was not a single word about military assistance. Asha smiles softly. The girl is touched by Derek's concern for her and Pervaz, but the prince still needs to be thanked. The black-haired woman tells the man that everything will be fine and leaves him alone. A minute later, Asha enters the red-haired man's room. A guy with his arms crossed on his chest is sitting on the couch. "Finally, you're here!" Looks like he was waiting for Asha. Carlisle says the girl can sit down. But the black-haired woman refuses. She wasn't going to stay long. Asha came only to express her gratitude to the prince. The boy doesn't like it very much. "You are ready to leave immediately after the words of gratitude," he says coldly. "Am I so disgusting to you that you can't spend even a little time with me?" Asha replies that this is not the case at all. The black-haired woman did not do very well, showing her distrust of the boy. And he's probably upset about it. The sooner Asha apologizes and thanks for the help, the better. Carlisle says there's no need to rush. It's even more interesting. The young man smiles and pours Asha a cup of tea. "I know that you have a lot of trouble, but maybe you will still find a moment for me." The red-haired man hopes that Asha will not refuse him. Fortunately for the boy, the black-haired girl doesn't mind a cup of tea at all. Before sitting down, the girl bows to the prince. The young man says that they don't need to be so formal with each other. The black-haired woman sits down on the sofa and takes a sip of fragrant tea. The redhead asks the girl if she is angry with him. Asha freezes in place. "What? Am I angry? You're joking?" The girl does not understand why she should be angry with the redhead. However, it should be the other way around. It was Asha who offended him with her mistrust. The boy says in a serious tone that he intervened in the fight, although the black-haired girl did not ask for help. The girl takes a sip of tea. "Oh, that's what he's talking about." Asha says that the young man has not done anything wrong. He saved Pervzaz from the fierce barbarians. The girl lowers her head. "I behaved excessively. If you, Your Highness, had not brought the knights in time, we would have lost many people." "In that case," Asha continues, "I would blame myself to death for not turning to you for help. If, of course, she herself survived." Carlisle asks the black-haired man if she is ready to die on the battlefield at any moment. This question seems strange to the girl. Is there a warrior who does not think about death during the battle? "Yes," says the redhead, "I am." He really never thought about dying in war. Perhaps it is normal for a person blessed by God. But everything is different in Asha, and the boy noticed it. "Tell me." He directs a careful look at the girl. "Were you joking when you asked me to make one of my children the ruler of Pervaz?" Black-haired replies that although her tone may have seemed sarcastic to the prince, she was completely serious. The young man is surprised. He takes a sip of tea. Carlisle did not expect that a person who is ready to give everything for the sake of his city would not want his descendants to be its next ruler. The girl says that it is not necessary. She wanted to sneeze on blood ties. For her, it is only important that Pervaz is in the hands of a responsible and honest person. Carlisle thinks, "You became famous because of the death of your father and brothers." The young man asks if he will honestly give this glory to an impostor. Asha is indignant. "Allow me. The title of ruler is not an heirloom that passes from father to his children." Carlisle quietly says that's not what he meant. It's just that other cities of the empire live according to this system. And it is strange for the boy to imagine that Pervaz will be ruled by someone not from Amir's family. Black Hair says that her family had to rule this city for several reasons. Firstly, the king decided so, and secondly, none of the aristocrats wanted to come here. Most people considered Pervaz a city of savages, where life was a punishment. But the inhabitants of the city are not at all as they are said to be. Carlisle agrees. The guy admits that Pervaz exceeded his expectations. The red-haired man was especially impressed by the skill of the local soldiers. During the battle, they acted harmoniously and efficiently. Asha smiles from the corner of her mouth. The girl is satisfied that Pervaz's army managed to impress the prince. Carlisle smiles back at the black-haired girl. For several seconds, the Marquis and the red-haired man look at each other in silence. Asha decides that the perfect moment to thank has come. "You saved me from trouble. I am grateful to you for this." The black-haired woman's pleasant words to Carlisle. In general, the boy really likes this evening. The young man was finally able to talk normally with his wife. Asha turned out to be quite an interesting interlocutor. But it is not necessary for her to know about it. The young man says in a haughty tone that his act was completely logical. If Pervaz's army was destroyed, then the prince would have problems. The guy asks if Asha wants to say anything else. "No, and you are Your Highness?" The girl directs an expectant look at the young man. She hopes Carlisle will thank her too, but the redhead says that he has already talked to Asha about everything he wanted. The girl is disappointed but does not show it. She gets up, bows to the prince and leaves the room. A few days later, Imperial Palace, one of the rooms. The queen sits on a chair and reads a letter from the barbarians. Matthias stands next to his mother, waiting for her to say something. The queen tells her son about the barbarian attack on the land of Pervaz. "How is this possible? I heard that all the foreigners were destroyed," says the blonde. Beatrice smiles gently. The queen is moved by her son's ignorance of state affairs. He is still such a child. The woman says that during the Great War, the residents of Pervaz destroyed the Lur tribe. This time the city was attacked by thunder. The guy says that all barbarians are the same. And yet, Beatrice smiles, we should be grateful to them. Matthias excitedly asks, why? Did they win? The woman replies that unfortunately the raid was not a failure. The Knights of Carlisle helped the Marquis. Matthias huffs and puffs. Then why thank these barbarians? Beatrice asks Chin why he is so nervous. Are you serious? Matthias does not hold back. They are unpredictable. If there are monsters, I'll have to go there. The boy says that it is necessary to urgently take Carlisle out of Pervaz. Someone has to scare away the monsters. The queen stands up and tells Matthias not to worry. She has already thought of everything. We will start a war again in Pervaz. The woman smiles ominously. Constant attacks by barbarian tribes on the city will tire Carlisle. Then he'll have to go back to the capital, Matthias exclaims happily. The queen says that this is a good scenario for the development of events. True, it would have been better if the red-haired man had been killed by a barbarian arrow. From the mother's words, orphans appear on the fair-haired man's skin. It seems the blonde doesn't want Carlisle to die. Because again, who will go on military campaigns? Beatrice puts her hands on her son's shoulders. Don't be afraid, dear. If Carlisle dies, you won't be sent to fight monsters, because you will be the only heir to the throne. A king would not risk his offspring like that. But the crown prince must have military experience. The blonde tries to deny. The queen says that everything will depend on the word of Matthias. The woman wants to get rid of the king himself before he, having fun with his mistress, has produced another child. But Beatrice will deal with her beloved husband later. Now the main thing is Carlisle. The queen shows her son a letter. Society is starting to pay attention to you, Matthias. We need to continue erasing your brother's tracks. True, it requires certain investments. Bilyavai reads the letter. We will provide the Graham tribe with weapons for the war with Pervaz, but barbarians don't have to win battles. The queen folds a piece of paper. That's right, son. The main thing is that the war lasts as long as possible. Let's test Carlisle's stamina. The woman also says that the priest Gabriel will go with them. Temple. Gabriel had just finished reading a letter from the queen. The man is smiling. He is happy with the way things are going. So far, everything is in his favor. The fair-haired man is heading to the meeting hall of the clergy. 8 men sit at a long oak table. One of them stands up to greet Gabriel. This dark-haired man with green eyes is the secretary of the Golden Branch Society. He apologizes to the priest for suddenly changing the meeting place. But Gabriel is not angry. Is it your fault? The dark-haired man falls silent. The high priest goes deep into the hall. He says that all inconveniences were created by the temple leadership, which compromised with secular society. Other clerics support Gabriel. We did not distort the word of God. We must obey the laws written in the holy books, but the state teaches us as heretics. Gabriel pushes his chair back. The man is glad that the priests are on his side, so it will be easier for him to achieve his goal. Livata will protect us, says the fair-haired man. Morning, Pervaza Castle. Asha walks down the hall to Carlisle's office. The prince called her. Only the girl does not understand why. They discussed everything as if yesterday. A black-haired woman enters the room. Carlisle in a white and red suit is already waiting for Asha there. The young man smiles charmingly. Good morning, Marquis. The guy tells the black-haired girl that he called her so that they could spend time together. We don't do it often enough for husband and wife. Don't you think so? Adds the young man. No, replies the black-haired man. But if you so wish, I don't mind staying with you. It seems to the girl that Carlisle is up to something, and this worries Asha. The Marquise shares her experiences with the redhead. The boy says that he is not working on a conspiracy against Asha and Pervaz. He just wants to have a normal conversation with his wife. Where does such enthusiasm come from, Your Grace? Asha is interested. You yourself wanted a marriage without obligations. Carlisle says he worries about what people think. They will definitely spread stupid rumors about the personal life of the Marquise and the Prince, who see each other once a week. Black Hair admits that Carlisle is right. They really should get to know each other better. The red-haired man asks the girl to give him a tour of the castle. With pleasure, Your Grace. Asha smiles. The girl decides to start with the floor where Carlisle and his subjects live. The red-haired man says that not long ago there was no furniture here. The black-haired man freezes in place. Now she understands why the prince's servants were so shocked when they arrived here. Anyone would be surprised to see that there is no furniture in the Marquise's house. But there is a reason for this. Asha says that she could not take care of the castle because of the war. She had to either sell all the furniture or use it for firewood to survive the winter. Carlisle is ashamed of his outrage. The young man decides to change the subject. They say the Lur tribe had 20 times more warriors than you. Asha says that this is not completely accurate information. If I'm not mistaken, 50 times. They attacked again and again and my father stopped them, adds the black-haired man with sadness and at the same time pride in his voice. The girl does not want to offend Carlisle, but it seems to her that Amir Pervaz was a warrior from God. The redhead says he doesn't mind it. The guy puts his hand on the Marquise's shoulder. You may not believe me, but honestly I respect your father as a knight. I am very sorry that the king treated him like that. Carlisle turns his back on Asha and walks down the hall. The boy notices that there is no picture on the walls. Why so? Asks red-haired Ashu. The black-haired man replies that the damned war is to blame for everything again. The inhabitants of the city had absolutely no time for drawing. Someone was fighting, and someone was hiding from enemy arrows. But now everything has changed, says the red-haired man. And whether you like it or not, we will have to make a family portrait and hang it on one of the walls. The girl doesn't understand why she and Carlisle have a portrait if they're going to break up in less than 3 years. The young man smiles. Why not? So that you don't forget me. Capital. Hall for clergy meetings. The blue-haired man says that it is impolite to take time from a busy person, so the priests should hurry and start the meeting. It has been half a year since His Highness Carlisle went to Pervaz. The clergy are wondering if it is time to do something. After all, the elder prince is a person who was born with the blessing of God, but does not live according to his principles. Gabriel says with indignation in his voice that the redhead is behaving in an unacceptable manner. He walks too much, communicates arrogantly with other people, and at the same time waits for his father's mercy. His Highness has many sins. Gabriel lowers his head, but Carlisle Evaristo is not the only heathen in this state. Royal nobles are basically rude and dirty scum who do not consider the common people as people. Gabriel learned the cruelty of the royal family firsthand. Since childhood, he was insulted and beaten. The blonde found his salvation in religion, because everyone is equal before God. At the age of 12, Gabriel began to study God's word. The boy spent day and night reading sacred books, reading every word. Don't divide people by status. He remembered it best. The blonde smiles at his colleagues and says that they don't have time to list all the sins of His Highness Carlisle. We are going to create a holy empire, adds the man. To do this, you need to help a prince who shares their aspirations. The priests do everything in their power to make Matthias the next king. Those present in the hall agree with the chief priest. The only question is how exactly they can help the younger prince. Gabriel says there is one way. While Matthias works on his reputation, the church has to change people's opinion about the redhead. A few days later, the carriage of the Dupuy family goes to Pervazam. Countess Cecilia is displeased. She does not like the quality of the roads in Pervaza. If the carriage had not been so well made, says the girl, I would have been in trouble a long time ago. The blonde asks herself why she is taking such a risk. 1 month ago, Dupit House. The blonde boy says that Cecilia should not go to Pervez. This young man is Elon Dupay, Cecilia's older brother. He crosses his arms over his chest. I don't think you will be happy there. There is no concept of a social circle in Pervaza. But Cecilia goes to the northern town for a reason. Above all, the girl aspires to become a crown princess. To do this, she needs to marry Carlisle. When he breaks up with the Marquise, the blonde will have a chance to become his bride. The girl tells her brother that she will go to Pervaz for the title. Another of Cecilia's older brothers, Dylan Dupay, says it's foolish. Why would a girl try to hook up with a married Carlisle when there's Matthias? It is the blonde who is now the first in line for the throne, But the blonde thinks that it won't last long. It seems to the Countess that the redhead is stronger than his younger brother. Pervaz Castle. Carlyle's office. The Viscount enters the room and bows to the boy. Your Highness, do you remember that the House of Dupay wrote about its intentions to prove its loyalty to you? The redhead says that he remembers something like that. The Viscount says in a somewhat displeased tone that proof of the Earl's family's loyalty has just arrived at the castle. Carlyle already wants to see what the Dupays have sent him. How surprised the boy is when Cecilia enters the office. The girl bows. May the glory of God be with you. The blonde approaches Carlyle's desk. The Countess smiles at the prince and says that she is honored to see him. The young man silently stares at the blonde. A minute later, the girl tells the prince that she has come to help him. What exactly? Asks the young man. The blonde says that she is one of the most talented employees of Swallow's Nest. This is the largest training center in the entire western region of the kingdom, and the fastest way to gather news from all corners of Chad and beyond. The girl leads to the fact that while Carlyle is here, it may be difficult for him to follow the course of events in the capital. Cecilia is ready to inform the prince about everything that is happening. The blonde already knows that stupid rumors about the redhead are spreading through the capital. People compare him to Prince Matthias and unfortunately prefer the latter. People believe that Carlyle wanted to kill his scholarly brother out of jealousy. The eldest prince's reputation is tarnished by Ella's priests. The redhead frowns. He knew that the church was somehow involved in this. Cecilia says the queen has recently appointed several priests to leadership positions, but Beatrice respects Gabriel Knox the most. The prince thanks the blonde for such valuable information for him. The girl bows to Carlyle. My house will support you in any situation. Carlyle stands up and holds out his hand to the girl. I hope so. Welcome to Pervaza, ladies. It is not easy to stay here. Will everything be okay with you? Cecilia assures the prince that she has prepared well for her stay in this northern town. Carlyle orders Lionel to allocate a room on the second floor for the Countess. Carlyle himself wants to introduce his guest to the mistress of the castle. A few minutes later, Cecilia enters the room. The girl wipes her face with a towel. You called me? Carlyle apologizes for taking his wife away from important matters. The guy recommends Cecilia Dupet to Asha, a person who will help him in business. For the black-haired woman as well as for Carlyle, the visit of the Countess was a surprise. Lady Dupay stands up and smiles at the Marquise. Nice to meet you, Marquise. Chorvelosa says that the road to Pervaz must have been difficult for the young Countess, because the city's roads are still being restored. The blonde says that only her maid was difficult. Due to the constant bouncing of the carriage on potholes, she could not do anything. I'm sure it was, Asha calmly answers. The girl asks Carlyle where his guest will live. The guy says that he has allocated rooms for Cecilia on the second floor. The blonde tries to pretend that she is sorry that she will live on the same floor as the prince. The Countess thinks that Asha will become jealous. But no. The black-haired woman is calm. You are His Highness's guest, so he decides where to accommodate you. The first floor is unfit for a young lady. Carlyle knows that his wife still lives in what he thinks are scary rooms. The guy asks Asha to arrange them. Of course, he will pay for all the necessary materials for this. Fine, says the black-haired man. The girl is going to leave the young Countess and Carlyle. The Marquise has urgent business. The redhead and Cecilia say goodbye to the girl. Viscount's room. The man is working with documents, but he is not thinking about work at all. The prince's aide was angered by Cecilia's arrival. The man is also dissatisfied with the good relationship between the Marquise and the prince. Lately everything is not as it should be, he says. The Viscount is convinced that Cecilia will fight for Carlyle. She is as greedy as Queen Beatrice. But the wife of the future king must be able to calmly support her husband. That's what my daughter would do, says the Viscount. He decides to summon Dorothy, his only child, to Pervaz. A few days later, the Viscount's daughter receives a letter from her father. The girl does not really want to go to Pervaz, but she has no choice. Dorothy went to the cold Pervaz. The girl did not want to go because she knew that they would try to drag her into dirty political games. But her father's words were law for the young lady. Gilt Lepelt was called a genius of that time. This serious, always impeccably dressed man was an authority in the academy. In addition to teaching, he was interested in science. Gilt brought home a lot of books. The family library of the Lepelts was immense. Dorothy could read as much as she wanted. She loved to immerse herself in the world of books, and no one limited the girl in this. Until she grew up. When the young lady turned 15, Gilt decided to seriously engage in her education. The husband forbade Dorothy to even touch the books. He believed that an intelligent woman cannot be loved. The dark-haired woman did not immediately understand what this meant. Then Lepelt told his daughter that he wanted to make her the wife of Prince Carlisle. For this, the dark-haired woman had to correspond to the image of an ideal aristocrat. Several days have passed. Dorothy arrived in Pervaz. The girl got out of the carriage and looked around the huge castle in which she would have to live for the next few months. The Viscount informed the prince about his daughter's arrival. The man said he called Dorothy to help him with the paperwork. He himself is already old for so much work. The dark-haired woman greeted His Highness with a perfect bow. The girl hoped that she had done everything right and that her father would not scold her. Fortunately for Dorothy, Gilt remained silent. The prince's eyes sparkled. Carlisle felt that the Viscount had deceived him. It is unlikely that such an intelligent person as Lepelt would need someone's help. Dorothy noticed the disbelief in the boy's eyes and hurried to assure him that she had indeed come to help her father. The girl said that although the elder Lepelt is a genius, he has too much to do. He does not have time to do everything himself. That's why Dorothy offered him her help. Gilt smiled, pleased with Dorothy's words. The man did not miss the opportunity to praise Dorothy in front of the prince. The elder Lepelt said that his daughter is more capable than many students at the academy, where he once worked as a teacher before serving in the royal palace. But the feeling of noodles hanging over his ears did not leave Carlisle. Dorothy came to Pervaz not long after Cecilia. Before the arrival of a member of the Dupay family, the Viscount was doing well. If Lepelt really needed help, he would have said so much earlier. So it seems that Dorothy has arrived at Asha's Zmauk to impress the prince. But Carlisle didn't want to talk about it. He followed the Marquise to introduce her to his next guest. A few minutes later, Asha entered the room. Dorothy smiled at the girl, and, as etiquette required, bowed and introduced herself to the mistress of the castle. At the same time, the dark-haired woman called Asha Her Highness. The Marquise was surprised. None of the aristocrats had ever addressed her like that. Almost all the rich people knew that Asha and Carlisle's marriage was a formality and did not consider the redhead's wife a princess. Black Hair asked Dorothy who she was. The Viscount intervened in the girl's conversation. He said the same thing to the Marquise that he had said to her husband. But the black-haired woman, unlike Carlisle, did not suspect anything. Of course, Asha did not think that the proud Viscount would ask anyone for help, but in the end it was none of her business. The only thing that worried the Marquise was the safety of the young lady. Pervaz was attacked almost daily by small barbarian tribes, so Dorothy should not leave the castle. If such a need arises, then the dark-haired person should be accompanied. Dorothy thanked the Marquise for her concern. The girl liked Asha Pervaz, her reserved kindness and sensitivity. Carlisle, who was tired of watching the formal conversation, suggested that Asha have dinner together. The black-haired woman did not refuse, and the prince was very happy about it. However, there was one nuance: the guests. Carlisle did not like the prospect of dinner in the presence of haughty aristocrats. But what will you do? Leaving Cecilia, the Viscount, and Dorothy to dine alone is not very polite. Corridor. Lepelt escorted his daughter to her room. The man did not like Dorothy's behavior in front of Asha and Carlisle. He told the dark-haired woman that Carlisle's wife was not necessarily addressed as Your Highness. A simple and at the same time not disparaging Marquise would be quite enough. Dorothy did not understand her father's claim. Asha is the prince's wife, even if they are only married on paper. If Dorothy ignores this fact, she may make a bad impression on Carlisle. The Viscount turned sharply to face his daughter. The man's eyes were burning with rage. He called Dorothy a fool who could not grasp the power of words. The redhead might see Asha as a princess if Dorothy continued to address the girl like that. And Lepelt cannot in any case allow the improvement of Asha and Carlisle's relationship. The man told his daughter to watch her tongue and do everything to please the prince, not his wife. Dorothy lowered her eyes. Okay, father. The Viscount nodded approvingly, abruptly turned his back on his daughter and left. When the old man entered one of the rooms, the girl sighed loudly. She could not refuse her father again. Dorothy loved and at the same time feared the Viscount so much that she obeyed all his orders without objection, no matter how disgusting they seemed to her. The next day, Asha's room. The girl was talking to the new butler. She asked him to worry about Pervez Castle. The butler, a tall man with a sharp nose, promised to do everything in his power. The black-haired woman, satisfied with the man's answer, shook his hand. Then the girl turned to Della. "Please help Samuel, at least for the first few months." The maid waved her hand and told the new butler that she would give him a short tour of the castle. The man shuddered for some reason, but in an instant he regained his composure. He said goodbye to Asha and hurried to leave the room. Blackhair and Dakar were somewhat surprised by the new servant's behavior, but decided to ignore it. Pervaza already has enough problems. Dakar offered his friend a walk around the castle. Asha happily agreed. The man and the girl went outside. Fallen leaves, yellowed grass, and overripe apples. That's what Pervez smelled like. Asha and Dakar enjoyed this pleasant aroma, just like the gentle autumn-like warm sun. The black-haired girl placed her face under the golden rays. Dakar told the girl that very soon the first harvest in 28 years would begin. For residents of Pervaz, this event will be a holiday. No one will starve in the city this year. And in the future, the first-timers will be able to grow wheat not only for themselves, but also for sale. Provided, of course, that Carlyle continues to support Pervaz. As for the prince, Dakar just wanted to talk to Asha about it. The man turned his head to the side and asked the black-haired woman if she was worried about the arrival of two young aristocrats to the castle. It seemed to Dakar that they had come to Pervaz for a reason. But Asha did not understand her husband's concern. The girl replied that Cecilia and Dorothy had come to help the prince. It is unlikely that they would travel several thousand kilometers from the capital just for the title of princess. And even if so, what is the difference? Black-haired does not care about Carlyle's ways. The main thing is that he continues to support the city. Dakar put his hand to his forehead. "Didn't you think about the rumors? Both his and your servants have eyes. Soon the whole state will know that your marriage is a formality." Asha said that she does not care about the opinion of arrogant aristocrats. Dakar asked the girl what she would do after the divorce. The black-haired woman smiled. "Don't worry. Better think about yourself." Dakar, like his girlfriend, has never had a relationship, and he's a little embarrassed about it. He began to indignantly prove to Asha that she does not know everything about his life, and in general, he will figure it out himself. The man and the girl went away. They did not know, and are unlikely to ever find out, that the crown prince himself was watching them from behind the old barn. The redhead flashed his eyes. "This is just ridiculous, Ash." The boy did not like the girl's behavior, if he did not deny it. However, the black-haired girl did not surprise Carlyle at all. He himself created the image of a libertine. But this was not even what offended the young man. It was unpleasant for him to think that Asha so easily believed in this image. She didn't even try to see the real Carlyle, and this annoyed the young man. Although what did the prince expect? He himself wanted Asha not to interfere in his affairs and treat him indifferently. After 5 minutes, Carlyle calmed down. The young man decided to return to the castle. Before that, for some reason, he looked back at the bench where Asha and Decker were sitting. The redhead wondered if there was anything between the two. They were engaged in the past for a reason. The boy's eyes flashed angrily. Jealousy of his wife awoke in him, and he can't do anything about it. The capital, the royal palace. Matthias is worried. The boy was proving to his mother the necessity of Carlyle's return. Bilyavai was very frightened by the prospect of going on a military campaign. The fact is that wyverns came to the north of the state. To protect the people, the imperial knights went there. They wanted Matthias to go with them, but the queen would not let her son go. Beatrice, unlike her beloved son, is completely calm. The woman asked the boy not to show off. Yes, her first plan turned out to be unsuccessful, but with the second, everything should definitely work out. But Matthias did not hear his mother. He shouted that he could not calm down when his life was in danger. It is easy for Beatrice to say that everything will be fine when her only duty is to sit in the palace. The blonde's hands trembled. "If I die, you won't be safe. You have to help me. Do something so that I am not sent to my death." Beatrice sighed. Frankly speaking, she was disgusted by Matthias's tantrums. Instead of winning the favor of his subjects, he whines day and night about his plight. No, such a weak-minded young man will not be able to become king, and Beatrice understood this a long time ago. The woman was preparing for the fact that she would have to manage the state. Matthias will only be the appearance of a ruler. Blonde asked the maid to bring a glass of wine for the prince. While the young man was sobbing with fear, The queen slipped something into his drink. Then the woman put her hand on her son's shoulder and asked to drink his wine. Matthias obeyed his mother. After a few minutes, the young man plunged into the kingdom of Morpheus. Beatrice ordered the servants to put the prince to bed. The woman hoped that Matthias would be able to sleep at least for a few hours. Recently, his behavior has become simply unbearable, and all because of Carlyle, who now owes nothing to the royal family. Beatrice promised herself to do everything so that the red-haired man died, or at least seriously injured. For this, Beatrice turned to Gabriel, her ally. The woman sent her husband a letter, and 3 days later she herself went to church. When Beatrice entered the main hall, the fair-haired man joined the queen, wishing her God's blessing. But Gabriel's sweet words were insincere. The man did not like the queen at all. He flirted with her only for the opportunity to turn Chad into a holy empire. Gabriel took a step to the woman's side and dryly asked how she was doing. The blonde pursed her lips. She told Gabriel about the difficulties that befell Matthias. According to the queen, the emperor behaves too gently. He is ready to entrust military power to a child without experience. The blonde sighed. Yes, things are pretty bad. The inhabitants of the state are unlikely to support Matthias, who knows nothing about military affairs. The boy did not even attend fencing lessons. Beatrice says that there was a reason for this. As a child, Mattis was very often ill. The queen simply could not allow her son's health to be ruined. In addition, it is not intended for wars. Matthias was born under the star of Asphodylus, the god of beauty and love. The blonde prince must become the ruler of the empire, its face, and Carlyle's mission is to protect the state. So the priest and Beatrice must find a way to return Carlyle to the capital. But how to do it? How to make a redhead leave the lands of the barbarians? The queen wanted to hear the answer to these questions from Gabriel. The priest thought, luring the prince out of Pervaz will be quite a difficult task. Carlyle has a bunch of advisors who simply will not let the prince make a mistake. And Asha is unlikely to want to let go of the man who provided for her city. Exactly, Asha. Gabriel had an idea. He offered the queen to annul the marriage of the red-haired man and Marquise Pervaz. Then Carlyle will be forced to return to the capital. The queen cautiously asked if it was possible to dissolve a marriage approved by the church. The priest flashed his blue eyes cheerfully. We will do our best. Annulment of a marriage approved by the church is really difficult, but there are several conditions under which it can be done. Gabriel walked deep into the hall. The queen picked up her dress and hurried to catch up with him. The man said that the conditions for the dissolution of the marriage are based on the disagreement on the marriage of one of the newlyweds and the disrespect of the spouses for God. By disrespect, Gabriel meant neglecting the laborer's attempts to conceive a child. The latter applies to Asha and Carlyle. Gabriel and the queen are sure that the prince and the marchioness have not spent a single night together. You just need to confirm it. The queen smiled and told the blonde that she would contact the royal spy in Pervaza very soon and ask him to gather information about Asha and Carlyle's married life. October, Pervaz. Welcome dinner for Cecilia and Dorothy. All residents and guests of the castle gathered at the table in the main hall. Surprisingly, Carlyle took the place of honor, not the mistress of Pervaza. It seems that Asha does not care where to sit. The maids served the food. Black-haired and Dekar whispered to each other. The man told his friend that he was a little worried. After all, there was never anything like this in the castle. Asha nodded her head. She herself was surprised by what the main hall had become. During the war, this place was used to execute enemies. Who would have thought that the arrival of guests would be celebrated here now? Carlyle announced the start of dinner. The clatter of silver knives and forks was heard in the hall, with which the guests cut the juicy dishes. Only Asha was in no hurry to eat. The girl tried to understand what kind of meat she had on her plate. Cecilia, sitting across from the marquise, smiled and told the black-haired woman that it was a turkey. In addition, properly cooked turkey. Soft and juicy as it should be. Suddenly Carlyle burst out laughing. It sounds strange, but the turkey made the guy laugh. Everyone present in the hall froze in place. They did not know how to react to the young man's behavior. Lionel did not break any silence. He decided to talk to Dorothy. They have not seen each other for a long time. The girl said that she had little work in the East, so she came to help her father. Carlyle, who had already suppressed his laughter, asked Cecilia how she felt in Pervaza. Isn't the climate too harsh for you, Madame Dupay? Carlyle placed a glass of wine on the table. Cecilia replied with a polite smile that everything was fine. However, she was interested in one question. How exactly Dorothy would help the Viscount? As far as the blonde knows, the man works with classified data. Is he going to share them with a young lady so easily, even if this lady is his daughter? Dorothy was touched by Sazelle's words, but the dark-haired woman was not going to show it. Then she would only be doing Lady Dupay a favor, who was trying to anger her. The Viscount's daughter smiled. She told Cecilia that she would run the Viscount's small errands, in no way related to the classified information he possessed. Mr. Lepelt himself intervened in the conversation. Vinny wanted to show the public the image of a loving father. The man told Cecilia not to worry that Dorothy might find out something secret. He trusts his daughter. But the Viscount has certain doubts about Cecilia. He told the blonde that he didn't trust her. And in general, the man put the fork on the table, you are a bargaining chip for your family. Lionel froze in place. He did not expect that the Viscount, a man from the worldly society, would behave so vulgarly. Cecilia reacted to Lepelt's insult surprisingly calmly. The girl called the Viscount a joker. She did not think that Lepelt did not know about her fame in higher circles. The man's eyes flashed angrily. Oh, believe me, I know. Only you got the word wrong. You are famous in men's circles. Cecilia closed her eyes and calmly replied that it was in the past. Carlyle, meanwhile, pretended to study his food carefully. The young man did not want to interfere in the quarrel of the aristocrats. And why, if his words will not change anything anyway? Lepelt and Dupet will continue to hate each other. They just won't talk about it at the table. But Dakar was stressed by the behavior of the guests. The man did not like Cecilia's words about the past. It seemed to Dakar that the girl hinted that she was betrothed to the prince. The black-haired man turned his head towards Asha. He expected to see anger or at least surprise on her face, but Asha was busy eating turkey and did not pay any attention to the conversations of the guests. Dakar asked the girl if everything was okay with her. Asha shuddered in surprise. She opened her eyes wide and said that the turkey was incredible. Dakar sighed. That's not what I'm talking about. The black-haired girl was surprised. From the expression on the girl's face, the man understood that there was no point in explaining anything to Asha. The black-haired woman is not familiar with the customs of high society. And the prince is not attracted to her to make him jealous of young ladies. Dorothy and Cecilia, after a few minutes' silence, resumed their exchange of courtesies. Parents became the subject of a new round of verbal struggle between aristocrats. Cecilia praised Dorothy's father. The dark-haired girl said that she thought Count Dupay was a good father too. Asha was silent. She did not like the atmosphere at the table, and conversations about parents were painful for her. Cecilia noticed the expression on the black-haired woman's face and hurried to apologize to her. Asha sighed and said everything is fine. She also sometimes talks about her father. Cecilia asked the black-haired man to tell something interesting about Amir Pervaz. The black-haired woman tensed. She did not understand why the young aristocrat had such interest in the person of Amir. However, the girl could not ignore the question either. In that case, Cecilia would resent her, and Carlyle would hardly be satisfied with his wife's behavior, and the black-haired woman cannot lose his trust. So Asha had no choice but to tell Cecilia a story about a famous warrior who served the queen devotedly. For this devotion, he presented Amir with Pervaz, and also the title of Marquise. Cecilia said as if she had heard that titles were only given to members of the royal family who fought in wars. Asha was offended by these words. So that's how you got your title too? She asked the blonde. Cecilia was silent. A tense silence reigned in the hall again. Everyone at the table looked at his plate. Suddenly, Carlyle spoke. The young man asked if there was too much food. If someone can't handle their portion, give it to me. The red-haired man tried to smile. No one responded to his proposal. The boy directed his gaze at Asha. The black-haired woman raised a glass of wine to her mouth. The girl paid no attention to Carlyle, and in general on anyone at the table. This worried the redhead. Cecilia and Dorothy told the black-haired woman in an almost tongue-in-cheek language why they had come to Pervaz, and she didn't care. Carlyle cut the turkey steak into 2 pieces. Of course, it's good that the Marquise doesn't cling to me with all kinds of romantic nonsense, the young man mused. But there is one caveat. The redhead worried about their reputation as a couple. If people guess that neither Asha nor Carlyle are fulfilling their marital duties, rumors will begin to spread throughout the country. These rumors will surely reach the royal palace. To prevent this, Carlyle decided to play the caring man a little. He asked Asha if she remembers the joint portrait. The girl was a little confused. She hadn't expected Carlyle to want to talk about it just now. After a few seconds, Asha answered in an uncertain tone that she remembered something like that. "Portrait?" cried Cecilia. It seems that the redhead's question puzzled not only his wife, even the Viscount strained slightly. Carlyle replied that there was nothing like that. If he is married, he must make a portrait and send it to the royal family. Another family portrait will hang here in Pervaz. Cecilia and the Viscount froze for a moment. If the prince discussed the portrait with his wife, then he probably takes her seriously. Yes, Lapelt and Dupé are in bad shape. The redhead asked Lionel if he had already chosen an artist for the portrait. The man smiled. Of all the people he wrote to, Fabien Rusco responded to the offer. Dorothy asked if this was the same artist who won the annual art contest 3 times. Cecilia added that such a person was worthy to paint His Highness's portrait. Asha snorted. The girls' conversation seemed funny to her. Each tried to show herself in front of Carlyle from the best side. Dorothy demonstrated her knowledge, and Cecilia simply praised the prince. Lapelta's daughter noticed a change in the black-haired woman's mood and cautiously asked what had happened. She suggested that maybe Asha wanted another artist to paint her and Carlyle's portrait. The black-haired woman sighed. Dorothy got it all wrong. But this is only for the better. Dark-haired should not know that the Marchioness considers her and Lady Dupet to be puppets who have been ordered to sell themselves. But Asha has to find an explanation for her dissatisfaction all by herself, the girl thought. In the end, she said she was just annoyed by all the fuss about the portrait. Carlyle nearly choked on his wine at these words. Meanwhile, the black-haired woman continued. She expressed her reluctance to put on jewelry and a dress, and then sit in one place for hours. Carlyle frowned and reminded his wife that it was her duty as a member of the royal family to pose with her chosen one for the wedding portrait. Mr. Lapelt's servant approached the table. The boy said that important news had been sent from the capital. He handed the man a scroll. Lapelt moved his chair slightly away from the others. This gesture was a simple security measure. Nothing personal. Then the Viscount unrolled the scroll. On the paper it was written that Asha and Carlyle wanted to have their marriage annulled. For example, spouses do not fulfill their obligations to each other. The Viscount clenched his teeth. He guessed that all this was the work of the royal family. Beatrice desperately wants her stepson back. Then he will again be able to go on military campaigns and thus protect Matthias. The Viscount glanced at Carlyle and Asha. Yes, it is hard to believe that they are husband and wife. The next day, the Viscount, as befits a faithful assistant, delivered a letter from the capital to Carlyle. The boy snorted as he finished reading. In principle, he expected this. Indeed, one of the servants told someone that the marriage of the prince and the marquise was a formality. Lionel said that the consent of the church is necessary to dissolve a marriage. Probably the queen had long ago agreed on everything with the high priest Gabriel, who promised to support Matthias in the fight for the throne. Carlyle sighed. The young man was disappointed in Gabriel. Carlyle could not even think that a priest would help a vile queen. The red-haired man stood up and asked Lionel if he wanted to go outside. 15 minutes passed. Carlyle and Lionel had just driven past farmers harvesting wheat. Rudavallasi noted that the state of health of the city's residents has improved compared to the past. At the end of this month, a harvest festival is to be held in Pervaz. Lionel said that this event will be held here for the first time in 28 years. Asha is very worried. Carlyle smiled out of the corner of his mouth. His wife reminded him of a child who eagerly waits for the holidays to receive gifts of sweets and new toys. Lionel said that the residents of Pervaz were interested in how to hold the festival properly. The man told them that during this event there was a lot of drinking, eating, and dancing. The redhead said he would provide food and drink for the townspeople. He wanted to ask his friend what else he needed to buy for the festival, but he didn't have time. Asha drove up to the gentleman. The girl greeted her husband and Lord Bailey, and asked what they were doing here. Carlyle said he wanted to see how the townspeople were preparing for the harvest festival. The black-haired girl's eyes sparkled, and she thanked the prince for being so concerned about a city that was foreign to him. I didn't expect that you would be so interested in the festival, Asha admitted. Carlyle was embarrassed by the black-haired woman's words. To get out of the awkward situation, the young man decided to ask his wife about the exact date of the festival. I think we'll hold it on the 27th of October, answered Asha, sparkling light gray eyes. Probably this festival will not be as grand as the festivals in the capital, but never mind. Even minor events will be a holiday for post-war Pervaz. Carlyle jokingly advised Asha to drink more at the festival. The excitement will pass in an instant, the young man smiled. The black-haired girl laughed. The prince lowered his eyes. He thought that Asha had noticed his strange behavior lately. Perhaps she decided to join the game of model couple. Several days have passed. Asha's office. The girl gave Samuel lists of the necessary products for the festival. The black-haired woman told the butler that this should be enough, but in case of which he can always turn to her. The man modestly nodded his head and hurried to leave the room without closing the door behind him. Derek asked Asha if it was too much. The black-haired woman did not immediately understand what was being said. It turned out that the Marquise's friend was not very happy with the fact that she was going to spend so much money on the festival. The man reminded the black-haired woman that Pervaza still had a lot of work to do. It is necessary to repair the roads, buy cattle after all, buy clay for dishes. Now is not the time for fun. Asha disagreed with Derek. The girl said that as long as Carlyle supports the city, at least one holiday should be organized for the residents. It will motivate people to work further. Besides, Asha really wants to see how everyone drinks and dances. The girl dreamed about it since childhood. When the black-haired girl was 10 years old, Amir Pervaz told her that after the end of the war, he would arrange a holiday for the people. Asha got up and went to the window. "If all goes well," said the girl, "next year we will hold the Harvest Festival again." The black-haired woman spoke with such confidence that Dakar did not dare to contradict her. Cecilia was standing by the open door. She overheard the conversation of two friends. And the girl was shocked by what she heard. First of all, the blonde did not think that Dasha was spending all the money Carlyle gave her on the development of the city. Secondly, she was surprised by the devotion of the black-haired Pervaz. Such love for one's hometown is worth a lot. Cecilia carefully closed the door to the room and went to her rooms. The girl caught herself thinking that if it weren't for the struggle for the prince, she and Asha would have become friends. Capital, the room of Vivian Lauren, the king's favorite. This blonde-haired girl with golden eyes looks excited. Vivian asked the maid why nothing was happening. The girl meant pregnancy. The maid said that it was quite a complicated process. Vivian's difficulties may have arisen because of the king's age. The man will soon turn 60. He is already quite old for children. However, his health is still good. So Vivian, there is nothing to worry about. But these words did not calm the royal mistress. To get pregnant and give birth to a child requires time, which is not so much for blondes. If Matthias can win the favor of his subjects, Vivian will simply disappear. The girl bit her lip. The blonde already had time to regret that she had made a deal with the Empress. Naive Vivian underestimated Matthias and his cunning mother. That is why the girl helped Beatrice deprive Carlyle of the title. Vivian clutched the skirt of her blue dress. Concerned by the lady's behavior, the maid said she would bring her some water now. The girl bowed to the blonde and left the room. Vivian sighed heavily. She needs to think things through. As the blonde is the favorite of the king, she has a chance to win the battle for the throne if she gives birth to a child. But it is clear that the queen will try in every possible way to prevent this. Vivian needs someone to help her control or at least monitor Beatrice's actions. Yes, a fair-haired Carlyle would definitely be needed. He would definitely team up with his father's mistress to rebel against Beatrice. But the red-haired man went to Pervaz. Vivian threw a glass vase against the wall. The girl is angry with everyone, and on the queen, who longs to put her stupid son on the throne, and on Carlyle, who left the palace at the first opportunity, and even on himself. Palace garden. The maids whispered among themselves about Vivian's behavior. They are sure that her irritation is caused by unsuccessful attempts to get pregnant. Matthias, who was just passing by, overheard the conversation between the two girls. The young man hid behind a large column so that no one would notice him, and listened to the words of the maids. From everything he heard, the prince understood that Vivian wanted to give birth to a child for the queen. The boy ran to his mother to inform her as soon as possible about the plan of the king's favorite. Beatrice, dressed in a red dress, was sitting in a chair and carefully reading some letter. The woman did not even pay attention to her son's excitement, which is quite strange. Beatrice always noticed such things. Matthias told his mother that he had learned something incredible about Vivian. "Can you imagine she wants to get pregnant by the king?" The young man's voice trembled from nerves. But the queen again ignored her son. "Mother," Matthias called the woman quietly. Beatrice finally put the letter down. She told Matthias that she listened to him because she had important news. The prince wondered what exactly had Beatrice so fascinated. The woman flashed her eyes slyly and said that it was about Carlyle. It looks like they will succeed in breaking up his marriage. The morning of the harvest festival in Pervaza. The streets are extremely clean. Sellers set up stalls with their goods in almost every corner of the city. People are fascinated by the variety of food, things, and drinks. Yes, this has never happened in Pervaza, even before the Great War. In general, this city began to be celebrated only after the victory of its army over the barbarians. Previously, Pervaz was a cold and remote land that no one wanted to know about. But now everything has changed. Asha is most happy about this. The girl had just finished crossing off the brought products from the list. Suddenly, a servant called the black-haired man. He told her that they had brought in a new batch of goods, the last for today. Asha asked him to take everything to the cook. A few minutes later, a huge bell rang, notifying the residents of Pervaz about the start of the festival. Asha and Carlyle entered the main square, dressed in couple suits. The black-haired woman said that Pervaz had been waiting for this day for 28 years. It was quite difficult to organize such a celebration. But the girl was helped by Prince Carlyle, to whom she is infinitely grateful. But the harvest festival is the merit of not only the redhead. None of this would have happened if it were not for the residents of Pervaz, who desperately fought for their motherland. "You deserve a break," Asha exclaimed. Festivities began in the city. Girls in simple but beautiful dresses danced with lively dances to the cheerful songs of local musicians. In the evening, people threw themselves on food and drink. Asha, passing through the corridor of the castle, ordered the servants to bring more dishes so that there would be enough for everyone. They nodded their heads. The girl was about to go about her business when suddenly someone's big hand fell on her shoulder. The black-haired woman shuddered in surprise. Asha looked around and saw Dakar. It was clear from the blush on the man's cheeks that he was completely drunk. In a drawling voice, the black-haired man offered his friend to drink with him. The girl wanted to refuse because she is the owner of Pervaz. If God forbid something happens, she will have to save the city's residents. And defending your lands in a drunken state is a bad idea. But Dakar did not want to listen to his girlfriend. He dragged her to the table where all the black-haired girl's friends were gathered. The man placed a huge mug of beer in front of Asha. Dakar said loudly that he wanted to drink to the health of the beautiful Mistress Pervaza. Asha smiled shyly. She loved the invitation, and especially praise from the bottom of my heart. Dakar took a sip of cold beer. The black-haired woman imitated the man. But instead of a pleasant taste, Asha felt only bitterness in her mouth. The Marquise grimaced. And the abomination. The black-haired woman did not understand how such a terrible drink could be liked by anyone. Dakar jokingly said that a person who is used to drinking expensive wines with the prince will not really taste beer. Asha replied that this is not the case at all. It's just that this intoxicating drink is terrible in itself. Dakar laughed out loud. He was amused by the girl's reaction to the beer. The black-haired girl looked like a child who had tried something very tasteless. Several men approached Asha and Dakar's table. They wanted to drink with their lady. And Asha simply could not refuse them. Then 2 more people joined the company of drunkards, then more and more. And the black-haired woman drank with them all. An hour later, Asha felt sick. The girl was so drunk that she barely understood where she was. The black-haired woman decided to stop until she finally lost control of herself. Asha told her friends that she had to give an errand to the servants and left the hall. The black-haired woman sat down on the floor and leaned her back against a huge marble column. Here the girl was going to get over her drunkenness. But her plans were destroyed by Carlyle, who appeared out of nowhere. The boy smiled when he saw Asha's face. He called Pervaz's mistress a drunkard. The black-haired woman remained silent. She was so sick that she could not even move her tongue, let alone speak. The smile left Carlyle's face. The young man asked the Marquise in a serious tone how much beer she had drunk. Everyone asked to share a mug of beer with them. The black-haired woman began to justify herself. I couldn't refuse people. Carlyle sat down on the floor next to the black-haired woman and bent down to face her. The boy told Asha that, of course, he has no right to tell an adult family what to do, but you can't get too drunk. Asha did not listen to the young man. His harsh voice seemed to her to be some kind of incomprehensible muttering. The red-haired man noticed this and decided to resort to a forbidden technique. What if someone attacks the city? It happened. Asha opened her eyes wide and jumped to her feet. The girl reached for her sword. "We were attacked. Do you need to fight back now?" Asha was not jokingly scared. Carlyle, already regretting his words about the barbarian attack, hastened to reassure her. He said that the attack of enemy tribes was a fiction. So far, Pervaz is completely safe, and even if something happens, he, Carlyle, will always come to his wife's aid. The boy gently sucked Asha's hand. Then Carlyle did something the girl didn't expect at all. He carefully hugged the girl to him and ran his hand through her unruly hair. "It's okay. Calm down." Asha fell silent. But not enough. After a few seconds, the black-haired girl broke out of Carlyle's arms and started thanking him. The boy was not surprised by the Marquise's sudden change of mood. All drunks behave quite unusually and unpredictably. The young man snorted and asked the black-haired woman what exactly she was expressing her gratitude for. After all, he did a lot of good things. The girl lowered her eyes and quietly said that she would not have been able to organize such a wonderful festival without Carlyle's help. And it is partially true. Asha knew nothing about such events. Carlyle smiled. He liked Asha's sincerity. He again jokingly asked the black-haired girl if she should kiss him every time they met. It would be the greatest gratitude for him. Asha frowned. Really? She did not think that the prince would want to feel her lips on his. He himself said that he did not plan to build a romantic relationship with the black-haired woman. "That's a weirdo," said the girl in her mind. She put a hand on Carlyle's shoulder. The boy recoiled. He thought that Asha would slap him for such bold words. But no. The black-haired girl, to the surprise of the prince, rather roughly grabbed him by the collar of his jacket and pulled him to her. Then the girl closed her eyes and stared into the red-haired man's mouth. Carlyle loved the feel of Asha's soft red lips on his lips, but he didn't return the kiss. The prince decided that this was not quite right. At least not when the black-haired woman is so drunk that she barely understands what's going on. Carlyle gently pushed the Marquise away from him and smiled gently at her. Asha silently stared at the prince for a few seconds, and then cried on his shoulder. The young man tried to stir up the black-haired man, but he did not succeed. Carlyle sighed. "Well, now we'll have to carry her to the room," the red-haired man said in his mind. The boy lifted the girl in his arms and went to his room. The next morning, the sun wafting into the prince's room woke up Asha. The girl cringed as soon as she opened her eyes. Asha felt, to put it mildly, not very well. The head ached excruciatingly and the body refused to obey. The black-haired woman promised herself never to drink so thoughtlessly again. She stared at the ceiling. Not a bright dark brown was a delight for the overstressed black-haired woman. The girl would have been lying like that for an hour, if not for Carlyle, who imperceptibly entered the room. He gave the fool a look full of condemnation. For Asha, the arrival of the prince was a surprise. The girl hastened to pull the blanket almost up to her chin. Carlyle asked Asha if she remembered what happened yesterday after he found her drunk in the hallway. Asha froze in place. "Did we spend the night together?" Carlyle smiled slyly. He wanted to tease Asha. "But you have to do it carefully," the red-haired man said in his mind. He already understood that his wife is very naive and vulnerable. For a few more minutes, Carlyle considered the plan of his story. Then the boy pulled a mask of seriousness on his face and said that Asha should first find out what happened yesterday. The young man said that he was walking through the castle in the evening and saw his wife in the corridor, who barely understood what was happening. "I tried to talk to you, but you fell asleep," Carlyle said. Then, he said, he carried the black-haired man to bed. The prince decided not to mention the passionate kiss. Not now. The red-haired man squinted to push away the uninvited memories. Asha was satisfied with the prince's answer. The girl asked how the first day of the festival ended. Did everyone have enough food and drink? Is no one lost? Questions flew out of Asha's mouth at breakneck speed. Carlyle smiled out of the corner of his mouth. He had no doubt that the black-haired man would become interested in the festival. Carlyle was already used to Asha constantly worrying about the residents of Pervaz more than about herself. The young man put his hand on the black-haired woman's shoulder and said that everything was wonderful. People were satisfied with food and drink. No one even noticed Asha's absence. Carlyle cleared his throat and said he had something else on his mind right now. The young man drew attention to Asha's nightgown. He is surprised that the black-haired man is absolutely not interested in why she slept in such clothes in his bed. The girl was embarrassed. "You said nothing happened?" She gave Carlyle a hopeful look. The boy said nothing. The silence in the room annoyed Asha. The black-haired woman wanted to say something but did not dare. About a minute later, Carlyle sat on the bed and looked into the girl's eyes. In a surprisingly calm tone, he asked the black-haired man to remind him of the terms of the contract they had signed before getting married. Asha was surprised by such a request. The girl did not understand why her husband suddenly decided to mention this. Is something wrong with him? The red-haired man kept his expectant gaze on Asha. After a few seconds, the young man said that the black-haired woman was supposed to play the role of an ideal wife. So perfect that even the queen, obsessed with the desire to kill Carlyle, did not suspect anything. "But you took this clause of our agreement lightly." The red-haired man waved his hand. Asha immediately denied his words. "It's not true." Carlyle smiled mockingly and said that the black-haired man shouldn't prove him wrong. She does not look like the elder prince's fool. And everyone who saw this couple understood this. "We can be declassified." The redhead's tone softened. "I think you'll agree with me." The black-haired woman wrapped her arms around her shoulders. She felt uncomfortable. Carlyle accused her of being cold to his royal persona, but he himself was no better. He never treated Asha as his wife. The kiss at the wedding and other few displays of love on his part were so staged that Asha was sickened by them. The redhead stood up and turned his back to his wife. The young man suggested that Asha spread rumors that they had spent the night together. "Still sitting on my bed in such a revealing outfit," Carlyle pointed out. Just in case, he warned the black-haired one that he would not ask her to do anything but lie to everyone in the castle. But Asha was not sure that anyone would believe their fiction. Carlyle said that all the residents and guests of the town were drunk that night without exception. It won't be that difficult to make them believe a lie. Asha remained silent. The redhead noticed the girl's hesitation. He decided to press her a little to get his way. "If this continues, our marriage will be annulled and I will be sent back to the capital." But the problem is not even that. In the event of a divorce, Carlyle will have to take back what he invested in Pervez. Fear appeared in the black-haired woman's eyes. Asha could not imagine how the inhabitants of the city would react if one day everything that the prince gave them disappeared. Hard times will come again for Pervez. Asha could not allow this. The girl sighed and told Carlyle that she would fulfill her duties as a loving wife. "Okay," the redhead paused. "Just take it seriously." Thus began the second day of the harvest festival in Pervaza. As His Highness had assumed, rumors about the royal couple spread through the Marquise's castle with incredible speed. All of Asha's servants, even the strict Della, gathered in the corridor. They were glad that the Marquise had finally spent the night with her husband. "I knew there was something between them," said one of the maids. Carlyle's staff were upset by the news of the royal couple. The servants tried to understand why their master had slept with Asha. And the main thing is how to destroy their relationship. Cecilia's room. The girl's maid is annoyed by the blonde's behavior. "How can you be so calm in such a situation?" Cecilia was silent. She really kept an icy calm. The girl did not react in any way to the rumors about Asha and Carlyle's night. The maid suggested that Carlyle could simply have succumbed to weakness. "There is no other explanation for the situation. Cecilia said that Asha was quite drunk last night, so it is quite possible that she herself climbed up to the redhead." Cecilia asked the maid if she was sure that the Marquise had spent the night in the prince's chambers. The girl timidly replied that she had heard it from the maid who had come into Carlyle's room last night. Cecilia's maid then approached her mistress and whispered, "His Highness has asked her to change into a Marquise. The nightgown was gorgeous." Cecilia pursed her lips. So maybe nothing else happened? But her hopes were not fulfilled. When Carlyle's maid left the prince's room, he was already in the same bed with Asha. The blonde clenched her fists in anger and frustration. Her plan began to fail. Cecilia thought that her arrival would break up the already not very close Carlyle and Ash. But it seems everything happened quite the opposite. The maid stepped away from her mistress for a few seconds to hand her a glass of water. The girl tried with all her might to calm the blonde. The maid said that Carlyle would never consider Asha as his wife. Marquise is too simple for a prince. The only thing in which Cecilia is inferior to her is military skill, and that, for a candidate for the place of the future queen, the ability to fight on the battlefield is not very important. But the maid's words did not affect Cecilia in any way. "That's only partially true, Angie," said the blonde coldly. "Yes, the Marquise is completely unfamiliar with royal customs, but you cannot underestimate her. Asha Pervaz is not only a skilled soldier but also a wonderful ruler. Residents of Pervaz love this girl and trust her." The maid opened her eyes wide. "So the Marquise has a lot of support," Cecilia continued, "but only from the common people. Among the aristocrats, few people know about Asha Pervaz." The blonde hinted that Asha can compete for the queen's place, but she is unlikely to win this fight. "Don't wave a saber at her," Cecilia smiled mockingly. Carlyle's office. The Viscount and Lionel came to the prince. The men wanted to ask something of His Highness. The prince sat silently at his table. He waited patiently for his assistants to finally say something. All this time the young man was looking at some piece of paper. Carlyle's expression was serious, but not angry. The Viscount took the prince's behavior as a good sign. The man told Lionel that he could ask Carlyle an uncomfortable question now. The redhead's friend collected his thoughts and spoke to the prince. "Your Highness, I heard some interesting news this morning." Lionel decided not to ask directly, so as not to anger the young man. He put the paper on the table and directed a questioning look at his assistants. "What news?" Lionel sighed and asked if it was true that Carlyle had spent the night with the Marquise. The redhead raised an eyebrow. "What?" He had been pestering Asha all morning about spreading rumors, but as it turned out, he himself was not ready for it. But after a few seconds, the young man still answered that it was true. Lionel's eyes widened, unable to believe what the prince had said. The Viscount just frowned. "Have you had too much to drink?" Lionel asked. The prince replied that quite a bit. He convinced his friend that alcohol had in no way influenced his decision to sleep with the Marquise. The Viscount tensed his facial muscles. It seemed that a moment later, and the man's head would pop like a balloon pierced by a needle. At that moment, the man hated everyone, and Asha, who in his opinion seduced the prince, and Carlyle himself, who succumbed to this temptation. The redhead arched an eyebrow and smiled faintly. He liked the Viscount's reaction. Lapelte's anger meant that he believed the rumors, and this is exactly what the redhead needed. For more convincing, the prince pretended that he was uncomfortable discussing what had happened that night. Still, it's personal. What he is not ready to share with anyone, even with his best friend and mentor. Lionel immediately apologized to the redhead. Carlyle said it was fine. In fact, the young man himself was going to tell Lionel that the night spent with Asha was a fiction. But not now. The redhead decided to wait until the Viscount left. The next day, the harvest festival was over. Under Asha's leadership, workers swept the streets, dismantled vendors' stalls and stands, and carried boxes of leftover food to the warehouse. As for the composition, it was completely filled with grain. The maids were surprised every time they counted the bags. There was no such amount of food in Pervaza for a long time. The mood in the city also began to change from the usual. Carlyle's servants began to call Asha not Marquise, but Her Highness, as the prince once demanded. Carlyle's office. The maid informed the young man that Asha wanted to see him. The redhead smiled and crossed his arms over his chest. "Let him in." A black-haired woman entered the room. The girl's look was somewhat guilty. Asha was afraid that she had made a wrong move in her and Carlyle's game of model marriage. The maid bowed to the prince and his wife and left the room without closing the door. It seems that this girl wanted to eavesdrop on the royal couple's conversation. Or it's just a coincidence. As soon as Asha walked deep into the room, the red-haired man laughed. Through laughter, he noted that after their departure, the attitude of the servants had noticeably changed. All of them, without exception, began to call the black-haired man, "Your Highness." The girl was a little confused. "It's true, but you know, I feel strange because of it. I didn't do anything special." Yes, Asha is not used to unfounded praise, but she, as a member of the royal family, needs to learn to accept compliments, even if they are insincere or silly. The boy smiled and said with pride in his voice that he was able to win the favor of the black-haired people, thanks to the fiction of a night together. The girl was surprised. She could not even think that a night of love could change everything. "They used to be a bit reserved," continued the prince, "but these past few days they sometimes smile at me." Carlyle's guests seemed to have believed the rumors too. The redhead hoped that when the young aristocrats would spread this news in the higher circles of society, when they returned to the capital. Asha put her hands on her knees, leaned forward a little, and looked into her husband's eyes. Does this mean we will succeed in deceiving the queen? Carlyle said that was unlikely. Beatrice will never believe that Carlyle and Asha love each other, but she will have no reason to prove otherwise, the Marquise thought. If her lie with Carlyle doesn't end up defeating Beatrice, but at least hurts her, then it's probably worth it. For the sake of Pervaz and gratitude to the black-haired prince, she is ready to endure this disgrace. Why shame? The fact is that Asha could not stand when someone discussed her personal life. Moreover, even her people began to treat her strangely, especially Nina. After the night of love, this young maid began to pester the black-haired woman about the need to take care of her health. In addition, she forced Asha to go to various health procedures. Nina gave her lady a face massage, prepared for her special masks made of rare healing herbs and baths with aroma oils. Black-haired did not like all this at all. She, like a true warrior, believed that only numerous exercises and a balanced diet can have a positive effect on health. However, the girl did not want to upset Nina. So, the Marquise had no choice but to obediently obey Nina's instructions and listen to her stories about the healing properties of various cosmetics. Finally, the day has come when the artist will begin work on the family portrait of Carlyle and Asha. Although the girl said that she did not care how it would turn out, deep down she was worried. The black-haired woman took a deep breath and entered the room, where Carlyle was already waiting for her, dressed in a festive white and red royal uniform. The girl apologized for being late. She said she couldn't come on time because of preparations. It took longer than I expected. In the black-haired woman's voice, guilt was felt. Carlyle smiled. But it was worth it. I have to admit that you look simply amazing. The guy was fascinated by the beauty of his wife. The last time he saw the girl in such an outfit was in January at their wedding. True, this time they chose a better dress for Asha. Quite modest, but refined. Blue suits her so much, said the redhead mentally. He also liked his wife's hairstyle. Her black hair was gathered in a neat bun from which a few strands were sticking out in places. Asha, in turn, could not take her eyes off Carlyle. It seemed to the girl that she looked like a gray mouse compared to the prince. The prince did put on his best suit. Capital. Vivian Lauren came to the royal garden. The girl was dressed in a pale pink dress with open shoulders and flared sleeves. Bilyavka approached the gazebo, where the most influential aristocrats of the country had gathered. Among them was Beatrice. The woman was surprised when she saw Vivian. The queen was not impressed by the fact that the king's mistress decided to join the meeting of noble ladies. No, the woman was rather shocked by the overly revealing outfit of young Vivian. The queen was aware that Lauren had dressed like this on purpose to provoke her. But Beatrice learned long ago to resist such tricks. The woman invited Vivian to the table. The queen's behavior was admired by other aristocrats. This is endurance. None of these women would be able to calmly drink tea with their husband's mistress. The aristocrats shamelessly stared at Vivian. The blonde pursed her lips. Yes, the tea party will be stressful. But the girl did not expect that the queen would give her a warm welcome. Finally, one of the aristocrats, a dark-haired young lady with green eyes, broke the awkward silence. She said with a smile on her face that she didn't expect to see Vivian here. The blonde laughed just as insincerely. I've wanted to meet you for a long time, lady, but I was worried that we might have misunderstandings because of our different statuses. The dark-haired girl asked Vivian how old she was. The blonde's eyes sparkled and she answered that she was 25. The girl felt her superiority over the young ladies when she mentioned her age. Yes, compared to the ladies present at the tea party, she was very young. Vivian, if not for her lust for power, could well have become the wife of the son of one of these aristocrats. Only the blonde gained some self-confidence, as the dark-haired lady ruined everything again. She said that she had heard that there was a certain priest who often came to Lauren's estate. Other aristocrats were quite interested in these words. They began to ask the dark-haired man what kind of priest he was. The woman gave a wry smile. He helps women get pregnant. Vivian did not react in any way to these words. The king arranged the marriage of the blonde with the old viscount in order to make the young lady his mistress. If the girl tells the queen what happened at the tea party, he will be angry. He will be so angry that he will punish his wife Beatrice. Vivian grimaced. She hated saying that name even in her mind. Suddenly, the queen intervened in the conversation of the two young ladies. The woman told the dark-haired aristocrat to cool down. After all, Vivian is the favorite of the king, and you need to treat her accordingly. Beatrice smiled at the girl. I hope you will forgive my friend for those rude words. Vivian did not understand why the queen was determined to protect her. However, Beatrice's words encouraged the girl. She loudly declared that she would do anything to give birth to the king's child. An hour later, the maid was combing Beatrice's hair when suddenly the queen leaned back in her chair and burst out laughing. The maid, to put it mildly, was shocked by such behavior. The girl cautiously asked if the queen could explain what had happened. Beatrice wiped away the tears that formed in her eyes from the frenzied giggles and said that they were little things. The woman simply recalled the tea party where she showed that she had no control over Vivian. The queen hoped that the aristocrats liked her tactics. In this case, the woman will be able to turn them against the king's mistress. But removing Vivian is not enough. The queen put her hand to her head. We still need to get rid of Carlyle somehow. Pervaz. The artist Fabien Rousseau, a man of medium height with thick gray hair, had already arrived at the castle. He greeted the couple and explained how they would work. Today we will make several sketches of the composition. The man pulled out a large sheet of snow-white paper from his suitcase. Asha asked how many sketches the artist plans to make. He replied that he himself did not know yet. First, he needs to figure out how to portray the royal couple in their best light, and then you can work on conveying emotions. The artist promised Asha and Carlyle to show the depth of their love. The black-haired man froze in place. She did not understand what kind of love it could be. The girl directed a questioning look at her husband. He smiled and twinkled his eyes cheerfully. We must trust the artist and support his idea. Asha had to agree with her husband. A few minutes later, the royal couple posed for the artists. He quickly drew something on paper, forbidding the boy and girl to move. Finally, Fabien said that was enough for today. He packed all his equipment into a suitcase and bowed to the couple. See you in 2 days. After that, the artist left the room. Asha and Carlyle were finally able to exhale. The red-haired man noticed that his wife was somewhat lethargic. He asked what actually happened. Did the girl get tired of sitting in one place? It is not difficult at all. Asha replied that this is not the case. It's just that I, like most people, don't like being looked at for a long time, said the girl. Carlyle leaned on the table. Since childhood, I had to perform in front of the public at various holidays and festivals. Maybe I didn't really want it, but my father forced me. Asha sympathized with the young man. He wanted to say that he was already used to it, but he suddenly fell silent. The young man thought that in some situations he behaved exactly like his wife. For example, he did not like to eat in the presence of other people. The old man gently smiled at the black-haired woman and said that he understood her. Asha froze in place. 2 months have passed. In October, the residents of Pervaz finished harvesting wheat, and in November they started preparing for winter. People packed food supplies in boxes and chopped firewood. Such careful preparations were not in vain. During the winter that came in December, the inhabitants of the city walked the streets and had fun. No one was cold or starving. Asha was incredibly happy about this. She often watched people from the window of her castle. Sometimes the girl was joined by Carlyle, who wanted to learn more about the life of the city's residents. One day during such observations, Asha remembered the past winters in Pervaz. Then snow did not bring joy but death. Whole families died of hypothermia. Those who managed to survive were not more lucky. People often had to cut off limbs that stopped functioning due to the unbearable cold. Asha trembled. These memories resonated painfully in the girl's soul. And no matter how well the residents of the city are doing now, the black-haired man will never forget the years of war. Carlyle was quick to reassure Asha. He put his hand on the girl's shoulder. Everything is fine now. The marquise crossed her arms over her chest and sighed. The redhead's words helped her cope with the wave of unpleasant memories. The black-haired woman thanked Carlyle. She thanked for everything, for moral support, for trust, for help to the residents of Pervaz. The girl said that she would definitely repay him. Carlyle thought. Of course, the prince would never ask Asha for money, and anything material in general. The only thing he wanted was to bring some traditions from the capital to Pervaz. For example, New Year. The black-haired woman asked what it was and how it was celebrated. The old man smiled. Well, the residents of the capital arrange sumptuous banquets to which they invite their relatives and friends. As for dishes, the most common New Year's food is grilled meat. Also, people really like cookies with strawberry jam. Asha froze in place. The girl thought that she herself would like to try all this. Carlyle pulled a small package tied with a pink ribbon from his pants pocket. The young man handed it to Asha. And they also exchanged gifts on New Year's. The redhead told Asha not to be shy and opened the package. I didn't prepare anything for him. This thought was spinning in the girl's head while she untied the ribbon. Then the black-haired woman carefully opened the box and saw an incredibly beautiful necklace with a large blue stone. The girl was amazed by such a gift. Carlyle approached his wife and took the jewelry from her hands. The young man said that the stone on the necklace is the stone of the heart. He will protect Asha from all kinds of dangers. The boy carefully fastened the necklace around the black-haired woman's neck. The girl confusedly thanked Carlyle. For the second time in a day. The old man only smiled gently. He liked the not very stormy but sincere reaction of the black-haired woman. The boy's eyes sparkled. It seems that he and Asha are getting better at pretending to be a perfect couple. Cecilia's room. A white dove flew through the open window. He landed on the blonde's desk. The girl smiled and untied a piece of paper from the bird's leg. Pipey, that was the name of Cecilia's favorite, brought the girl the news that Carlyle was allegedly going to summon a demon. These rumors were spread by the main church. Not without the participation of the Queen, of course. In this way, the woman wanted to influence the middle class. Cecilia clutched the letter in her hand. The girl herself, of course, did not believe in this witch with a demon. But the middle class, which has not yet decided which prince to support, may well take a lie for the truth. Cecilia decided to tell Carlyle about everything. The boy was not surprised that the Queen decided to ruin his reputation again. But how can I summon a demon? Asked the young man to Cecilia. The girl replied that the church relied on the 4th chapter of Hamark's book in this matter. It says that a person who burns 10 temples and kills 100 people can summon a demon. The Viscount snorted when he heard this. I never thought priests could behave so ungratefully. Lionel supported the old man. The cunning of the clergy really knew no bounds. When Carlyle returned from another war, they prayed for him, called him God's chosen one. And the prince should have left the capital, as they accused him of blasphemy. Lepelt said that while the rumors are complete nonsense, they have already tarnished Carlyle's reputation. The guy understood it himself. He asked his assistants what he should do now. The Viscount replied that an event was needed that could prove the red-haired man's irreplaceability. The young man snorted. I am indispensable only on the battlefield, and you know it very well, Viscount. Lionel intervened in the conversation and suggested that the prince declare war on the southern regions. Then everyone will see what a skilled warrior Carlyle is. But the boy immediately rejected this idea. His duty is to protect people, not to expose them to danger. Perhaps war would indeed come in handy now, but the prince would not be the first to declare it. For now, Carlyle's best bet would be to visit the kingdom's capital, so the boy will be able to assess the atmosphere in society and sometimes visit Gabriel. The boy turned to Cecilia. He said with a smile on his face that he was once again in her debt. The girl bowed to the prince. What about you? I'm always happy to help you. The blonde then left Carlyle's office, informing the boy that she had a lot to do. But if anything, he can always turn to her for help, even if this help concerns personal issues. The girl walked down the corridor and considered the situation. In her opinion, the prince did wrong by refusing to declare war. A few days later, Lionel came to the prince's office to tell him about the incident that happened between the royal guards and Asha's men. The redhead was not surprised. He was already used to constant conflicts between the inhabitants of Pervaz and the royal staff. And, frankly speaking, these fights bored the prince. He asked Lionel what happened this time. The man replied that the knights from the capital did not want to clear the snow. Because of this, they fought with the assistance of the Marquis. The red-haired man put his hand to his head. God, when will these guards calm down? Ashi must have already been told everything. Lionel said it probably was. But if the redhead wants to avoid a loud argument, he can call Asha and talk to her. Carlyle did not immediately accept such a proposal. I am not a peacemaker for you. He believed that the black-haired woman should come to him herself. Lionel said that in that case, the atmosphere would be the same as the day the redhead almost cut off the servants' tongues. Now is not the time for conflicts and pride. The curly-haired one sighed. Okay, ask her for a date. No, not even like that. It is necessary to do it more gently. Invite her to visit me. Several minutes passed. Asha entered Carlisle's office. The girl's expression of affection was serious, but the black-haired girl at least did not immediately start expressing her claims to the prince's people, like last time. The redhead invited the girl to sit down. The young man admitted that his people had started the fight. He apologized for the conflict between the royal knights and the inhabitants of Pervaz. The girl answered in an indifferent tone that the apology was accepted. A tense silence reigned in the room. Lionel looked at the prince looked at his wife, and she looked at Lionel. About a minute later, the prince's friend broke the silence. He said that something needs to be done about the interaction of the people of the capital with Asha's assistants. If you don't intervene, they kill each other. Carlisle asked his friend what he was suggesting. Maybe they should train together. Asha said that then there will be more conflicts. Lionel hastened to calm the girl down. At first, Asha and Carlisle's people will indeed quarrel, but over time they will be able to share their military experience with each other. Carlisle sighed. Such a proposal touched his pride. He was not sure that Pervazu's military would be able to teach the royal army anything. Asha, of course, did not agree with the boy. The inhabitants of her city fought for 28 years. They have more than enough experience. The girl even suggested that Pervazu's army could defeat the king's army in a straight fight. The redhead smiled mockingly. He said that the black-haired one must be joking. The girl's eyes flashed angrily. I'm absolutely serious. Lionel sighed. He didn't expect that Asha and Carlisle would almost fight over his words. 2 days later, the redhead and his wife still agreed to Lionel's proposal. They gathered their troops on the training ground. Those present greeted the prince and marquise. Carlisle's troops simply bowed to the steam, but the inhabitants of Pervaz fell to their knees. This greeting seemed too solemn to the red-haired man. Asha said that it is their custom. Carlisle ordered all the soldiers to line up in several rows and said that from this day forward they would begin training together. Of course, these words caused indignation among the residents of Pervaz and the people of the capital. But the most angry were the knights. They did not understand why they had to deal with commoners, and also use their methods of struggle. Carlisle crossed his arms over his chest. For 28 years, Pervaz's troops fought against the Varavars. They know more about wild tribes than you do. Barbarians are very unpredictable, and the usual techniques of the royal army in the fight against them may simply not work. So there's nothing wrong with the knights teaching the knights a little. The military gritted their teeth but agreed. As the resident of Pervaz and the royal soldier began to fight with swords, Asha sighed. The girl admitted that she would not have been able to persuade the soldiers to train together if she was the main commander. And Carlisle, in turn, said that the army of Pervaz is really not inferior to the army of the capital. Night, Pervaz Castle. Asha and Dakar have just finished working with the documents. The black-haired woman got up from the couch and told her husband that he did a great job. The girl was about to leave the office when Dakar stopped her. He cautiously asked the girl if she was okay. The black-haired woman froze in place. She thought about how to answer this question. On the one hand, everything was not bad at all. Pervaz flourished. Relations between the soldiers managed to be established. But still, something was wrong. For some reason, the black-haired woman felt that she had done something wrong by agreeing to marry Carlisle. The girl squeezed the sleeve of her snow-white shirt. I don't know. Dakar stood up and approached the black-haired woman. The man was not jokingly excited. Never, not even on the battlefield, had he seen Asha so confused. Dakar asked Asha what was the reason for her strange behavior. Maybe it's all because of Carlisle. The black-haired one lowered her eyes. What makes you think that Carlisle is the center of the universe that everything depends on? Dakar said he didn't mean that at all. But the girl's answer helped him guess what the matter was. The man looked into the black-haired woman's eyes and asked if the prince had accidentally touched her pride. Asha turned her back to Dakar. The girl did not want to talk about her feelings because they seemed absurd to her. But the man was not going to let his girlfriend go so easily. He told Asha that she can tell him anything she wants. I will not judge you under any circumstances. Dakar's tone was soft and soothing. The black-haired woman sighed and began her story. She is glad that the prince helped Pervaz and the life of the city's residents improved. A year ago, the winners did not even dream of such conditions. I am indescribably happy when I see the smiles on the faces of the Pervaz residents. Asha did not take her eyes off the floor. But to be honest, I think I should have rebuilt Pervaz on my own. Dekar listened carefully to the girl. He understood why Asha was so gloomy all day. She was worried about not needing Pervaz. After all the positive changes in the city happened thanks to the prince. Dekar took a step towards the black-haired woman and put his hands on her shoulders. How could you think that? Bitterness was felt in the man's tone. Dekar asked Asha if anyone had told her how guilty the first-timers felt when they returned home from the capital shortly after the royal wedding. The man's hands were shaking. Asha did not understand what was being said. Suddenly, the always calm and composed Deka burst into a cry. "We saved our lives by selling you." And let Asha herself decide to sacrifice her happiness for Pervaz. It didn't matter. Dekar believed that he and the Marquise's other friends should have stopped her. The man cried. The black-haired man's broad shoulders shook with sobs. But even through his tears he was able to say the most important thing. "The person we serve is you, Asho Pervaz, not Carlisle Evaristo." The black-haired woman, touched by such devotion, began to comfort her friend. The girl put her hand on his shoulder and thanked him for his support. Asha thought to herself that Dekar was right. No matter what Carlisle does, Pervaz is controlled by her. Therefore, she should not make the townspeople jealous of the prince. It is better, on the contrary, to properly thank the prince. End of April, Pervaz. Asha and Carlisle looked through binoculars at the strange buildings that had appeared on the outskirts of the city in just a few days. The redhead suggested that it was the Egram tribe's handiwork. But Asha was not sure about it. Barbarians are used to living together on abandoned lands. It is unlikely that they would set up camp on the outskirts of the city. Carlisle wondered why the barbarian tribes and the First Nations never got along. What prevented them from peacefully coexisting, like other regions of the empire? Asha said that she once asked such questions to her father. He said that Pervaz tried to reconcile with the barbarians, but they did not make contact in any way. Wild tribes were always looking for blood and other people's suffering. So after numerous attacks on Pervaz, the ruler of the city asked for protection from the Lord of the Kingdom of Chad. He kindly agreed to make a small city in the north a part of a small state. True, this did not help to stop the raids of the barbarians. They constantly terrorized the First Nations, robbed their lands. According to Amir Pervaz, the strength of wild tribes was their unpredictability and cohesion. However, they lost to the city's army in the ability to build defensive structures. Asha remembered this information about the barbarians for the rest of her life, and for good reason. Thanks to her knowledge of the enemy tribes, the black-haired woman guessed that the barbarians were not alone in erecting strange structures. But who helped the wild tribes? They could not get along with any people. The loud ringing of the bell pulled the girl out of her thoughts. Someone shouted that Pervaz was attacked by barbarians. The black-haired girl bit her lip. The girl tried to quickly make a plan in her head for the next course of action. Carlisle was also considering how he should be. The young man looked out the window and saw that not far from the fortifications, the Varavars had erected catapults. From them, they shot stones at the city. Asha heard the crash of a stone that probably fell near the castle. The girl, without explaining anything to the prince, jumped up and ran to her office. Her assistants were already waiting for the Marquise there. Dekar, of course, was also among them. He handed Asha a sword and said that Pervaz had been attacked by the Egram tribe. And it seems that someone helped these barbarians. They could not have prepared so brilliantly for battle on their own. Asha understood it herself. The girl would have preferred to know who exactly decided to serve the players, but she did not have time to think. Instead, the girl asked how many attackers there were. One of the soldiers answered that there are more than 2,000 people in the active forces. It is still impossible to count the number of rear-line soldiers. The men also noticed that most of the barbarians had war horses. Asha frowned. Yes, the situation is not the best, but it is necessary to fight. This time, the black-haired girl decided to ignore her own pride and ask the prince for help. A few minutes later, the girl entered her husband's office. She told the boy in a serious tone that things were bad and Pervaz needed his help. Blackhair asked Carlisle to give the city army some weapons and some horses. The redhead arched an eyebrow. He wasn't going to stay in the castle while his wife put herself in danger. In a tone that did not tolerate objections, the young man declared that he would fight the barbarians with Asha. It will be fair. Besides, to be honest, the townspeople can't handle the tribe on their own. I apologize in advance for my words, but it would be very foolish of you to leave me and my troops in the castle. said the young man. The black-haired woman froze in place. She had to admit that Carlyle was right. Now you should put aside your pride and focus all your efforts on protecting the city from enemies. The redhead added that if Ash was worried about retribution, they would talk about it later, after the fight. 20 minutes passed. Pervaz's army and royal knights were already preparing for battle. This is the first army in history that had two commanders, Carlyle Evaristo and Asha Pervaz. The redhead surveyed the area. He noticed that the barbarians were advancing on the city in a very organized manner. It's not like them at all. The young man was once again convinced that someone was helping the wild tribes, and he even guessed who it was. Queen Beatrice, of course. It simply could not be otherwise. This woman was ready to do anything to get rid of Carlyle, even to make friends with savages. Perhaps the queen thought they could kill her hated stepson. But how wrong she was. Carlyle is an experienced warrior who knows how to act in unpredictable situations. He gathered around him the most skilled soldiers of Pervaz and the capital and told them about his plan. Solon and Bailey will command the right and left flanks, and Dekar will remain to defend the castle. As for the prince himself, he and Asha will go ahead. Everyone unanimously agreed with this division of duties. Carlyle looked at Asha and gave her a nod. Fight! The pioneers rushed to meet the barbarians. They wanted to get lost among the wild tribe in order to kill as many enemies as possible. The redhead shouted to Asha that he trusted her to protect his rear. Carlyle hacked down the first barbarian. A moment later, another, then another, and another. All this time, Asha mercilessly beheaded all the savages who approached the prince. Carlyle was pleased with his wife's work. When most of the barbarians lay on the battlefield, Asha walked around the prince and stopped her horse in front of him. In this way, the redhead could see who was going to attack his wife and warn her about it in time. The same was true of Asha. She screamed loudly when she saw a certain savage rushing towards the prince. The coordinated actions of Carlyle and the Marquis surprised everyone, in particular Fabien Ruscot, a famous artist. He watched the battle from the window of his house. The man was amazed when he saw Asha helping her husband. Fabien could not even think that the Marquise would go into battle herself. But he will not be inferior to Carlyle in military prowess. The artist decided that he simply had to depict this warrior couple not in the cold walls of the castle, but on the battlefield. Fabien took the pencil in his hands and smiled. This work will be a masterpiece. The battle continued. The red-haired man and his wife bravely fought off the barbarians. Blood splattered everywhere, but the royal couple paid no attention to it. They weren't going to stop until they killed all the savages. Suddenly, Carlyle heard strange words from the mouth of one of the barbarians. These words were like some order. The young man listened. He tried to understand what language the savages spoke. She seemed surprisingly familiar to Carlyle. The old man remembered that once, when he was not yet 15, he had heard something similar from the mouths of sorcerers who could sometimes be seen in the capital. Ash's shout broke the redhead's thoughts. Carlyle! The boy looked around and saw how the girl pierced the chest of the savage who wanted to attack the prince with her sword. "Did you fall asleep?" asked the black-haired woman indignantly. "You should be more careful." Carlyle said he just thought about the barbarian's words. The girl replied that the battlefield is not a place for reasoning, and the language of savages has no meaning. They will die anyway. The girl's eyes flashed angrily. Carlyle sighed. Asha was right. In no case should you lose your vigilance during the battle. The red-haired man caught himself thinking that he had behaved so strangely out of habit. He hasn't killed anyone in a long time. The old man took a deep breath. You have to concentrate, or the barbarians will take my head off and bring it to Beatrice as a trophy. The boy turned his back to Asha and loudly ordered the army to move. The black-haired woman told her husband that she would cover him from behind, as they had agreed at the beginning of the fight. Carlyle rushed forward. On his way, he killed more than 10 savages. Asha, on the other hand, repelled attacks from behind. Suddenly, there was a frenzied scream of the barbarian. He's wearing just a black-haired one. Carlyle fortunately noticed this and had time to turn his horse around to drive the point of his sword into the Iorog's chest. He immediately fell from his horse on the hard, blood-stained ground. The redhead and the Marquise exchanged glances. Asha silently expressed her gratitude to the prince for saving her. He smiled out of the corner of his mouth. Like, "You're welcome." Several hours passed. The sun was slowly sinking below the horizon. Asha and Carlyle stood on the battlefield and looked at the corpses of their enemies. The battle is over. The prince and the marquise were more than satisfied. But in addition to joy, another strange feeling unlike anything else raged in their hearts, and they could not resist him. The redhead and the girl threw their weapons on the ground. Carlyle approached his wife and she kissed him. This kiss was similar to what happened on the day of the festival. But this time the young man did not push the black-haired man away. They kissed for several minutes and let go of each other only when they heard the joyful shouts of their subordinates. "Hurrah! Pervaz won! The capital, the temple." Gabriel drew some strange sign in the air. At the same time, the man feverishly whispered some incomprehensible words. Looks like he was into magic, and black magic. Gabriel moved his hands along the strange sign. Suddenly the man was struck by an unknown force. He recoiled and clutched his heart. When the sharp pain passed, the priest looked at the sign again. The man sighed in exasperation. "These people are of no use. I helped them so much and they couldn't even hurt Carlyle." During the magical ritual, the forces of Gabriel and the redhead clashed, and the prince turned out to be stronger than the chief priest of the kingdom. Gabriel felt like an assistant of the devil. From a young age, the fair-haired man tried to make the kingdom of Chad a democratic and just state. However, the boy could not destroy the invisible wall that separated the rich and the poor. One day, when Gabriel was not yet 20 years old, he was walking through the streets of the capital. Suddenly, the priest heard the joyful shouts of the people. "Prince Carlyle has arrived." Gabriel walked out into the main square to look at the heir to the throne. The priest noticed how the servant of the prince pushed one boy and did not even apologize. Gabriel, then still a good man with a heart and soul, approached the little one and asked if he had killed himself. The boy replied that everything is fine. Then the priest directed his gaze at the red-haired man. Gabriel hoped that the young prince would say something to the child, but Carlyle did not even turn his head in the boy's direction. The prince simply drove past the boy. The priest was disappointed by Carlyle's superior behavior. That day, Gabriel promised himself to do everything so that the throne did not go to the redhead. The blonde began to look for ways to get rid of Carlyle. The man was looking for various books that could help him in this difficult and dirty business. Once, during another search in the library, Gabriel noticed a black book with no title on one of the shelves. This find interested the priest. The blonde opened the book and froze in place. He could not believe what he saw. The book talked about dark magic, the use of which was forbidden in the kingdom. Gabriel managed to take this book home. The fair-haired man began to read it carefully. The deeper he plunged into black magic, the blacker his soul became. The blonde understood this, but he wasn't going to stop. He convinced himself that he was doing for the good of the kingdom. And so, on the day of Carlyle and Asha's battle with the barbarians, Gabriel realized that he had gone too far. The priest turned into an assistant of the devil. Gabriel thought desperately about what to do. How to cleanse your soul. It is impossible to turn everything back. Continuing the fight with Carlyle, who is protected by the god of war, is also not an option. Suddenly, Gabriel had a good idea. He decided to try to master the lands of the barbarians, Pervaz. The combined forces of the city burned all the catapults within the border, repaired the damaged buildings, and returned to the castle. There, Asha and Carlyle were met by Dakar. He thanked the couple for protecting Pervaz. Carlyle placed a hand on the man's shoulder. "You did a great job as well. Thanks to the regular supply of troops, we could fight without pauses." The boy and Asha went inside the castle. Red-haired expressed his desire to hold a banquet in the city in honor of the victory over the players. The black-haired girl said that it was possible only with the help of the prince. The thing is that the Pervashchi did not know how to celebrate the victory. They never had such feasts. "It's not because we're savages," said the black-haired woman. "It's just that after the end of the 28 Years' War, we have almost nothing left." The red-haired man flashed his eyes. Now everything has changed. The guy was ready to donate all his money to organize a lavish banquet for the city's residents. The day after, Carlyle really arranged a grand celebration for the first-timers. People drank, ate, danced, and discussed the battle with the barbarians among themselves. The marquise and the prince were standing on the balcony. The boy felt as good as possible. He was able to stand up to the queen, who is now apparently furious, protect the lands of Pervazu from the barbarians, and restore relations between the local warriors and knights. The young man also became close to his wife. They started talking to each other more often. walking around the city and doing administrative work together. The boy suddenly wondered why Asha had kissed him on the battlefield. Then she was not drunk, as on the day of the festival. "Does she really like me?" the young man asked himself. "Your Highness?" quietly called Prince Asha. The red-haired man shivered in surprise. He asked the girl what she wanted. The black-haired woman looked into her husband's eyes and said in a voice full of devotion that she was ready to do everything in her power. The boy did not understand what she was talking about. "I must thank you for your help," Asha waved her hand. "What do you want? Next year I will be able to introduce a tax in the city and thus collect money for you." The redhead smiled slyly and leaned down to face his wife. "You want to repay me with money? Not bad, but I have enough of it," said the prince. The black-haired woman frowned. She didn't like the redhead's tone, too confident and bold. The girl asked what she could give him then. "Air," the young man whispered in her ear. Asha froze in place.